Negrowaffen, Poopenfarten. Und gibt jetzt dort. Service resource is being rate limited. Hello. I'm trying to type up a message. Okay, that works at least. Don't know if that'll work, but okay. Hello, Juan. Alright, so while I am very obviously playing Turtle Well in the background, I have a breakdown list of things that are important that we need to go over. Because people are going to ask me questions, so refer them here to this. I need a window. I need a window. This window will work. Boom, bop, bada boom. Open this. Boom. Notepad, bow. Okay, so several things. One, this is very big. Not very big. It needs to be smaller. Okay, so smaller with hydro transition. There we go. Okay, so number one. I hate the medical system. The reason for this, for anybody asking questions about, Carl, we were doing CGG every single week. What's going on? My mother's in the hospital. Might have to change the Obsidian to use this because there's pictures. My phone's in my bed. But the simple first answer is my mother's in the hospital. You're drawing this, boom, clap, sound of my heart. The beat goes on and on and on and on. Okay. Change to Obsidian now. Fast forward to the future, old man. Okay, so. My mother is in the hospital. That's number one. Number two. They fucked her on her insurance. And sent her to a bad public perception facility. Two, or rather three, she had knee replacement surgery. And I am her caregiver. And first line advocate. Which also means dealing with my company. This is not a rant. So, number 1 through 3 things that are important for context. Why people will have questions of me. Because some of you have been sending me DMs. And one of you, at least one of you, asked me last night. I missed the boat, didn't I? So we don't need... Second button. Don't need this one. Don't need this one. Don't need this one. Copy paste. So, what has happened is my mother had a full knee surgery. Bone replacement down to the tibia. She got her staples and her suture bag and wound bag replaced yesterday. And we are now going on the Grand Lark chase for an itemized bill for everything that's going on. Very not fun in the marketing department. Because not only are they sending us on a lark chase, they're sending us on a lark chase where it is several different problems all happening, collapsing at the same time. This affects my payment schedule because every day that she's in the hospital is a day that I do not get paid for my job. Because they cannot pay the healthcare system and me at the same time. One of my agents that are a part of the company, that was a part of my case management team, is no longer with the company. And this was on the day that she was being sent into the hospital. It has been a trial and tribulation, but we're across the hump of most of it. Because most of it was retarded bullshit that I had to deal with at the same time of dealing with everything else. So those are the main 1, 2, 3 things, okay? Again, if anybody asks what's going on at Carl, please direct them here. Don't ask me any more questions. They're kind of annoying. But only in the sense of I answer the question and somebody asks me the question again. Outside of that, what have we been up to? Well, in the line of things of what have we been doing, what is important, what's been going on, we have been inside of Turtle since the 26th of April. As those of you who remembered, it was about 3.5 weeks that Turtle has to exist. It is now May the 8th, 2026, which means the day that this becomes the 15th, it equals that T-Wow is dead. Here's the date. Here's the thing.
I did not.
Hello, Lindera.
I did not think Turtle won't last that short.
It's been alive around for years, but they were cease and desisted. I've covered this on the channel. But I have been doing this since Dev announced it in his server and I announced it in mine the day of the announcement. And we've been doing that the entire time while that's been going on. So when that day comes around, Turtle goes bye-bye. And that's where most of my attention outside of my regular content has been, because it's been a crossover for anybody who's inside of DevCord and knows DevCord who wanted to be in DevCord. There's some who came, some who didn't. Not important who did or who didn't. Simply, literally for the fun. If you had the time to do so. If you didn't have the time to do so, not a big deal. At the same time, Marathon continues to have interesting brouhaha. They are doing yet again another sponsored event, namely for Perimeter. I would have to get a handle on Marcus, because since this shit happened, I didn't even get to try the Dire March sponsors that I wanted to. But the drama itself, who is fucking calling my house? I don't recognize that name.
I'm from Orlando, SO.
The lot of things happening in Marathon have gotten to a point where I have somehow found myself defending Paul Tassi of all people. Because every single time there is now a news story talking about what the game is doing, they are looking at numbers that are very low for dividend returns as a loss leader for Bungie, but the Xbox leads see large number retention, so they're going to try to ride the shit down to the ground for as long as it's worth. I have found myself making various posts, effectively drawing out the worst parts of the worst people with the worst takes, because they just don't want to admit that they don't really care that much about the video game, and they care infinitely more about dunking on the chuds. This has become an actual conversation topic because of people now doing this about Anita Sarkeesian and games that she's coming up in that allegedly cite her as a part of the advocate and or consulting team that has somehow tarnished their beautiful, lovely, delicious video game for the worse, which I don't understand how that works when literally people were ranting and raving that these games were the best thing since sliced bread. Think it's retarded, think it's dumb. The only thing I can be able to cover for you, if you're somehow out of the loop on this, is that it was a credit in the back end of Slay the Spire and a couple other video games that have come out to try and say they do use advocacy and it's best and it's good and they don't care or it's bad and they don't do it and it's the worst asset flip this side of a fucking Unreal Engine project. Regardless of that, the Marathon shit is spooling down because I find myself not caring for it. It was what it was, which was a content pivot. This Turtle Wow content was a content pivot. So, around about the time that Turtle Wow dies is when you're going to see me doing the switch up for the majority of the content that involves anything nearby to it or Marathon. Because I will then be gearing up for the end of the month, which not only involves doing all this extra paperwork, leading towards when my mother eventually will be returned to my home, because she will be at the rehab facility for a week, but also my day-to-day business with whatever I choose to get up into and that I have to catch up on. Which brings us to 4, or rather 5. That brings us to 5 when we move from the pivot of Turtle Wow. That takes us to being able to focus on all those things that I've allegedly missed. This should be bigger. Yeah, this should be bigger. That brings us to all the things that I've allegedly missed. What are the things that I've allegedly missed? Well, it's not things that I've allegedly missed. It's things that I'm sitting on and I'm waiting to develop. So, I told this to Jack, and I explained this to him, that there have been some interesting changes on the channel of the Xemnas Consortium. I have learned, picked up, researched, pulled out information, and detailed some things about Comey Gagnon, the content creator behind the Xemnas Consortium. Last time, on Powers Time Force, the majority of you remember the article that was written by Jack about this, because he's not too far away from me in the area of Atlanta. Well, I'm not going to give away the sauce of the sauce, but this is one of the many things that I'm working on in the background. When I have more information, there will be a stream that will be made about it. It will be evergreen. You will go watch it. Another thing is the June the King drama. Currently having made his own video about the 2 decades of grifting. Eventually, at some point, I have to sit down and consume this content, because this is a part of the now ongoing drama with the quartering, where the quartering continues to go into this cycle of being a relevant lolcow, because things and reasons. On top of that, it connects to the never-ending hunting saga that is Utterly Noah having his life implode, Anthony Gramuglia being the ultimate grifter around him, Utterly Noah getting indefinitely exposed as a continuum between EFAP and all the people on EFAP noticing the same thing that Kinoflex already did, and finding the time to do that with him, because originally I was supposed to sit down with him and do all of that, and I couldn't. And the main reason why I couldn't was because of the shit with my mother. I'm so sorry. My mother's health comes before internet drama. I don't care. And then, of course, on top of connecting with Kino over that, going back and looking at this drama, specifically that is involving Anthony Muccia and Utterly Noah, and the reaction that came from the Birdman. And then a bunch of shit that I wanted to put out in terms of reviews, takes, rants, deep dives, and all of my other backlogged projects. Which, to represent that image... Where is it in here? Where is it in here? Represents shit like, say, the horrible content video from the user Crimes New Roman. Because there's an entire thing I want to do about that. Because then everything else flows from there as I clear out my backlog of both Versus Chat content as well as I think I'm 2 episodes behind on the Yappin', only because, again, the Sundays in which these things happened within the last 2 weeks has been me dealing with this shit non-stop between the healthcare company and my company to get them to do their goddamn jobs. But everything in the expanse leads from these things here, okay? I have been spending time helping Dev with this project. This is literally for a video of things that will be on his channel. We have been playing that video game, I wouldn't say semi-religiously, in terms of what I would say as a gamer, but serious enough that you have seen less of me talking, but not necessarily because I'm not talking, it's because I've been writing. I've been writing on Twitter. I've been writing posts on Twitter. I've been writing posts on the community posts. Those of you that are paying attention to the community posts have seen those posts. When I am writing those things, and I am discussing those things in another server, namely the dev server, amongst the Devcordians, I will forward those posts into Relaxation Lounge. There have been people who have reacted to them inside the server. So, any of those things that would cross over are the things that you've seen me posting. And on those things that I have been posting, from which these things come from, that is where almost all of that stuff originates. So, when I talk about the example of having done defense of Paul Tassi, what I'm particularly talking about is posts like this. Quote, "There is no fucking world or saving you if you think that Paul Tassi is on the same level as Mark Your Welcome Gamer's Kern or any influencer or muckraker account sensationalizing the game because it gets them dollar dues. You have to be made fun of, full stop." And I wrote this post because there are people unironically fucking angry and mad about Marathon being dog shit, but also still being around and it being a whole thing. Paul says, "I just flat out do not know what a Marathon pivot would be, not that it would help significantly in any case." Or if someone called DWG Gaming says there is no pivot, "People online like you are generally the reason it's dying. The game is nearly perfect as is, but you constantly post player counts, making people think the game is dying. Best not get it now, which is fucking stupid. Tarkov never had to deal with this." When literally nobody ever said that. And Paul Tassi never said that. How the fuck did I find myself here? Where I'm defending the alleged game journalists! I don't know. But this has been the shit that I've been on, okay? Quite literally, I have been writing like I'm running out of time. Because every single time I go onto Twitter, I am either looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of content, like the one that is currently on my phone right now, probably still queued up on my TikTok. If it's not, I'll pull it out and I'll show it to you in a second. But I've been writing posts. I've been writing threads. I've been writing dissertations. I've been writing scripts. With the intention... Can you not? Whatever, go see. White woman shaking her ass. Anyways, I've been writing posts, and I have been writing reactions to shit to the same level that you have seen from the Pragmata Projection video. I think that's a really good video that is emblematic of this path that I'm currently on within the era of Carl Luther. Because every single time I have seen people do this thing where they believe that, haha, I'm talking about things like a meme, but they're also real. They're so real that it's so cancerous. But it's so cancerous that I can't stop interacting with it. I just have to keep engaging with the content. I have to keep gloviating in the content. I can't just avoid the content and do something different. It is necessary that I keep putting myself in positions, seeing and hearing things that I don't like, that I claim that I don't like, but continuing to obsess myself over them. I am tired. I am tired. I am tired of seeing it happening over and over again. And so, I have been writing dissertations multiple times, multiple times over, because every single time I have tried my best to be reasonable about how people are choosing to treat and or systematically communicate that knowledge and the error content. It somehow continues to bring itself to the same axiomatic point, which is people get bored, they then decide they don't want to do work, and then they get really lazy, and then they obsess over shit that isn't important, and then when we try to get them on the same page, they take things way too far, and then they act like people reacting to what they're doing are being unreasonable, when in reality, it is people reacting appropriately to the kind of responses that they get from the regular people. The only way that I can really phrase it is people systematically reacting to and infinitely reverberating off of grifters. Grifters, air quote. This means accounts like Shitpost Rock. This means accounts that are very much positive, quote, Gamergate. I am tired of seeing them. I'm tired of seeing the dumbass repeal the 19th level takes from people who are feminine in how they act and speak, as well as them acting like unrenounceable feminists that believe they really live in a Gilead fantasy. But on the level of the shit that is similar to this on the screen, I have been writing non-stop posts. Now, I'm not saying that you have to promote and re-like and tweet and re-follow every single fucking post that I write like this on Twitter, but it is the case that between when I am writing these things, some of them are not going to make it into video format. They're barely making it into TikTok formats now, because a lot of them are not worth being full-handed discussions, because the people talking are not saying these things in the faith of being criticized. They are just popping off wild at the mouth, and the take only deserves to be reacted to in short form. So, let's put that into context. Moving from there, number 6. You're going to see a lot of short form Carl takes, if not ones too long for shorts, being Carl Yaps coming onto YouTube. And for those that somehow do not know what that is, despite it being a playlist that I made this year, there is a playlist on my channel called Carl Yaps.
I know it exists.
A lot of these takes that I've been having, or a lot of videos that I've been having, especially if they're about things like, say, just me doing a power hour, like I did about Sol Sesto when it was launched, or any of the things that I've written, like the difficulty as relative design featuring the escapist take, the exhaustion of PC dick writers and anti-woke grifters talking about things, or anything that has to do with the app in itself, has been going into a playlist called Carl Yaps. You can find that playlist link here as I post onto the discussion, and you can see the link here in full format, or at least one of the versions of it here, as a hyperlink to the post. And it is the case that I have been just making lots and lots and lots of videos in this series, or posting lots of videos in this series. Most of them have been unique since, I don't even remember when, but to go full screen, the last video that I've technically made on that level that hit the regard of like 2.1k views since Prog Matter Projection was 2 weeks ago, technically. There is lots of videos in here of my news, views, rants, and reviews of things, of topics, of video games, of subject matter. And technically at this point, allegedly the list says it's at least a year old, because I started when I started criticizing Smash GT and McDizzle more when horror was still with us. And it has been a thing since then. This is where you find me accruing the things that I've made on TikTok and using as a part of my breakdown of the things I'm analyzing. It is where you've seen my reactions to things, like how I was crashing out about Adi Shankar and his never-ending content. This is where you basically find all those things. Some in podcast format. Some in, you could say, video essay format. If at all there is any content that you can say, I'm bored and I don't have anything to use and Carl hasn't posted anything, yes I have! It is here. It has always been here. I keep seeing people telling me that I'm not making things. And I'm tired of having the discussion. So, if anybody asks, please direct him here. So to recap that, for anybody who just came in and is new, starting to the top of the list, beep, bop, boop, bop, 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 and I'm going to make this bigger, to the list. What I have been doing is that I have been dealing with medical problems. I have been helping my mother get through her physical therapy rehab, trying to make the best of a shit situation on her medical. This has been taking up a lot of my time as her first-line advocate and her caregiver. Have to deal with both her insurance and also my company, because a member of my care circle is no longer with the company, and we've had to readjust because we were not told the change happened as she was going to the hospital. We have been on Turtle Wow. It hasn't been so much a big focus or a main focus, but it has been a side focus because it is content that Dev is making, and I agreed to help. Multiple Carl Gordians and Dev Gordians have been on it. Some technically have fallen out because they had their own life shit, and that's fine. Between that, I've been keeping up and researching several different topics, including one that I originally promised, as well as the additional backup that I promised Jack. So technically, the biggest winner here is Jack, actually. Jack is winning twice, because not only is he going to probably get content about the thing that he originally asked me for, he's going to get another follow-up video on top of that, as well as me doing my own breakdown of the content. Should at some point, and I should probably take that post from Relaxation Lounge, where I made that plan publicly with KanoFlex. I'd scroll up a bit, where I said we would make the thing happen, where I would follow up with him so I could get his opinion directly from him so that we could make the content. Because I told you guys about this on the 5th. And that is where this post comes from. So, all that stuff is happening at the same time. Gotta get on top of that and get touch bases with him. And in the meantime, while I'm in between this little ambulatory phase, I am making lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of yap-like takes. Some of them are short and will be shorts. Some of them will also be cross-posted to Twitter and Instagram. One of them have already come out, but it's not one that's related to anything that's yap-worthy. It's just what some of you have missed, literally while I'm live on Turtle Wow. If you see the video, you know, but that's what's been going on. Alright? Comments, questions, concerns?
I was just wondering how your mom's doing. I saw your post.
She is currently back at the rehab hospital. Yesterday was a appointment where we needed to go there. She got her staples taken out from her suture and then had her suture redressed and then replaced by the doctors. She has a 2-week follow-up. I also had my own medical shit where I met with my nutritionist, and I have to meet with her in, I think, 6 weeks. And I have an upcoming dental appointment on the 17th, I believe. So I can have
that's my birthday.
so I can physically get my teeth checked. Because my dental health is not the greatest.
And there's mine.
Speaking of appointments, I have surgery for my carpal syndrome hands scheduled for week 43. That's in October.
Okay.
Well, I hope it goes well.
I'm pretty sure it will.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. I was dealing with finals. Sorry. I was dealing with finals, and turns out yesterday, the app that a lot of schools and colleges use was hacked from a from like a group called the Shiny Hunters, which that's funny, but also like all the people on there are probably fucking losers.
Trust no one.
But
What is it?
Did they fuck up anything on your records?
no, they were just saying they were gonna release data.
Okay.
Like honestly, I don't care.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, and concerns about housekeeping?
Earlier you mentioned about like people like saying, "Oh, I can't stand not looking at the content," and then they can't stop looking at it.
Yes.
It reminded me of like what an addiction is.
Yes, there have been people who have had an addiction of bringing me bad news, and it was actually brought up to me. Also, people in dev courts miss you. They say hi. There are people that have brought up the issue to me where they have complained saying, Carl, you have all this negative news. Why do you always have all this negative news? And half of it is because of some people. Not people here, not necessarily people in specifics, but people in general, both on the internet that I'm witnessing, and people giving me articles about shit, showing me negative shit, and then nobody's ever around to hear about the positive or neutral stuff. And I sat down and had that conversation with them, and it's fine. Basically, we came to the conclusion that it's J Funky's fault. It is J.
Okay.
The particular conversation was triggered and prompted by J Funky asking me a question that I had, or rather asking me to talk about some things on my mind that I was thinking of that was relevant to Turtle Wow, because as I had talked about it with Dev last night and other people, because he actually finally decided to start joining the voice comms so we could actually get through dungeons. The way in which Dev is looking at this project that he's doing with the interest of Turtle Wow and showing off the things inside of it and making it like a video essay is very in line with how he made his take about Turtle Wow, or excuse me, not about Turtle Wow, about OnlyFans and the OnlyFans drama around Pirate Software, the same way that I made my one part review video, one part, here's some people trying to force drama upon me in Once Human, where I was reviewing the game and talking about its mechanics and how it functions, as much as showing off the things inside of it that one can do in the game, while explaining that, hey, there's a guy that decided he's going to harass me constantly inside of the game, and the fact that you guys are not here to notice it is kind of a problem, because this person is using the fact that there aren't people showing up to help push back against them as a justification for why it's okay to continue harassing me. At the time, the idea was, and the concept was, this person has lied about me incessantly. It was a known fucking troublemaker that was a part of the Once Human server at the time. This person kept telling lies to people, saying that I was making up having a family, that I didn't actually have a partner, that I wasn't actually a father or stepfather. Very much in the context of some of the shit that I've made fun of in the Pragmatic Projection video, in relevance to the December 6th debate I did against Relevant. Basically, the entire internet is now on my side of the opinion, but the only reason they got there was because June made fun of Hassan Piker, where originally I made fun of the people actively trying to make this point, but because I was not more aggressive with them, I have been in a state of what I'm describing as a permanent install ultimate, where every single time a person's telling me, oh, that's not real, I've been throwing data at their face and telling them, okay, now lie to me and say that it's not real again. Because every time I found myself in a situation like this, there are people that try to question the words I use, the way I speak, the way I talk about subject matter, and it has been not so much a leftist meme, but more like the more annoyed I get, the more accurate and short-worded I become, but the more aggressive I become. Because of people going out of their way to try and yuck people's yum, because they don't want to have real conversations. And this is technically important to what Bloomer had brought up, because Bloomer was the one who presented the discussion in question. But in relevance to how Dev is recording his video, it's very similar to how I made the Pragmatic Rejection video, and very similar to how I made my original Once Human review. In Dev's mind, he is doing this for content, but he is not treating this like he is doing a research video about politics, or preparing for a knockdown, drag-out debate. He's doing this in what many people would frame as fun slop. And at the time, when I was having that discussion with J Funky and Bloomer, I just simply vented what I was explaining and feeling, because this is some shit that, why can't Dev just simply make this clear? Because he never necessarily announced this originally. He announced that he was going to be playing the game. He never made it clear until other people through side channels told us, and then he confirmed himself later that this would be recorded on camera. So, once again, Dev not getting the ball rolling. A blue. Regardless, with less than a week left, it's like requiring us to kind of like put a lot of focus on it. That's why you can hear me doing it in the background, and why I'm not necessarily doing something right here, right now. But the long and short is, the people that have the ability to show up and do something in it while there's still time left, you can basically get a chance to say hi, YouTube. I don't know what clips he's going to use. More than likely, most of it's going to be B-roll. But it is the case that he is making a video about Turtle WoW. He will be making a video about how, hey, maybe when you run a private server, you shouldn't be bragging about basically making buku dollars off the people that run the game. And maybe don't be the kind of retards that put that level of interest and focus into making it about yourselves. It would be smart that you don't do that, because that would be dumb and would get you in lots of trouble. And that's something that many of you that were a part of the experience can look forward to. Moving past that, I say that in relationship to that because I, turn this over here because I actually scratched off one of these, I over here have in total $50 worth of Steam gift card money. Now, originally, $20 was going to go to the first ER tournament for the first running of the hands. For those that weren't there the day of the recording, you can simply watch that back. They're recorded as the Negrohood's finest. The titles show which days are round 1 knockouts and round 2 finals. The final conclusion of the tournament was that I was the grand finalist winner, but the rule is I cannot take this money. So, originally, the second hand winner was Reflex Sight, who pulled out a character to almost take the entire board if he had been able to knock me out for himself. But because he had to go, originally, my ruling, but technically the ruling of He of High Fade, which is basically me in my own priestly robes, which is the, whatchamacallem,
His persona.
The desk persona, not of the announcer character, but of the pseudo-like Dorito Negrohood priest that mentally, for those of you that need like an image of what this character is, it is basically the same thing as the Dorito Pope, except mine is a Baja Blast vestment and a giant high top cut fade afro that also doubles as a pre-stat. I'm going to get someone to draw this in the future. But
Be funny as hell.
my ruling for the tournament was that since there was only 3 round place finalists, because Jay Funky's ass thought that he was knocked out of the tournament, he didn't actually realize that he was supposed to be in the tournament in the Fatal 4-Way. He didn't show up to an event, so he was knocked out automatically. That left Fancy, Reflex, and myself. Reflex lost, but then he had to go to his family's affair. So we were going to, or rather I was going to, award the $20 to McFancy. But Fancy was feeling himself that day because, or rather he was not feeling himself that day because he felt like he did not perform well enough to deserve to accept the money. So it has been sitting here on my desk inside the coffers of many things that I can have to give back to the audience in the form of anything. I bought another $30 card because since my payment is based on my caregiving and my mother's not in my home, I'm not going to be paid very much on my next check. So I bought that ahead of time so that once she's settled, right now, originally, the plan is that every 14 days there was going to be a tournament. Right now, until she's back home, I'm not going to have the ability to properly plan that shit to make sure that I can keep that up. It's just going to be too much hassle at the same time because there's only one of me. We do have server moderators, but in terms of playing with the money and touching the money and handing it to people and running the event, there's only one person who broadcasts from my stream key, and that is me. Those server events are always going to be broadcasted. So if I'm not there to broadcast them, and I don't have a person who's there to be the shoutcaster on the desk, I have to run it the exact same way I ran the first one. So, until I can have her back home, it's not postponed, it's just delayed to be announced. And once she's back settled, continue your practicing. There will be more of it in the future. This is the same reason why there hadn't been proper CGG nights that were being broadcasted as well, because this shit was happening in the background. But I bought at least $30 to add to the coffer for a total of $50, either handed out together as a singular prize or handed out as a $20 and then $30 lump sum with whatever I buy in the future for other events and other giveaways of shit to sweeten the deal and to sweeten the pot of things we have to do. Because yesterday I had to do it using the non-live VOD version for Twitch, but I went over the patch announcements of Path of Exile 2, and 0.5 will be dropping on the 29th of May. It is basically going to be an entire 3-week period, starting from literally yesterday. So from May 7th to May 29th is an entire gearing up phase, where this is the biggest expansion patch that they've had to offer completely, period. I will go grab for you a screen cap of it, and I will put it on screen for those that were not there as a part of the broadcast right after I pee. And I'm going to turn my microphone off real quick as I go into the bathroom. I'll be right back. Alright. So, Path of Exile shit. The private server should be coming to a close. I did not extend it for another 30 days simply because I ended up getting distracted with a lot of other shit and a lot of other video games. So I would have seen it as a waste. There was only about 4 people that were in the private server, including myself, Marcus, Draconian, and a couple of other people. And I know that Marcus has been dealing with his own personal stuff, so that's whatever. On the side of Path of Exile 2, however, going to their live stream, because I need to get a cap directly from the content reveal.
Hi.
Hi, John. The entire breakdown of the reveal is basically an entire revisory update of the entire endgame. And how big this update is basically this entire screen cap. There's a lot more that isn't in the screen cap, but the rough planner of it, moving here, so to number 7, in terms of what is Carl doing next. Here, button, copy. Here is the entirety of this patch being the next thing that I'm gearing up for in terms of content. And that is this. For those that are playing the home game, we're going to project this screen so that you can see it. But what they have done with Return of the Ancients for 0.5.0 is basically an entire revamp of everything inside of Path of Exile 2 with the purposes of addressing the problem of people feeling like, quote, there's no real direction, there's no real storylines, there's nothing to do. As it has always been the case, the game was always created and designed to help new players to Path of Exile play the game. Because Exile 1 is the more complex game, and Exile 2 is the onboarding system to get you comfortable so that you can understand how to function in the first system. This expansion is basically a revamping of the in-game storyline for the Origins of the Divinity, and a revamping of 5, which includes the new league, the Runes of Aldur League, so read that as Kalgoran timeline and Kalgoran content. 5 revampings of the new in-game storylines, technically 6, for the content. And each pieces of those content, as well as the entire overall system around the Atlas in-game, and around the storylines involving the core content that was in the game, which involved Expedition, which now also involves a new form of Grand Expedition that directly affects how you travel the map. Breach now being revamped to Breach 2.0. Delirium now being revamped into a new form where it's closer to being more like the system of Breach, but with gray flavors. And Ritual, which has now been redone entirely to these different plot lines that they've written for, and the investment of what can only be described as Atlas Masters that give you additional bonus skill points that replace the old upgrades that would have been on the original Atlas tree for the new, bigger, divisive Atlas tree that involves going through a giant citadel, which is a version of the Burning Monolith, inside of the penultimate storyline at the center of the game called the Origins of Divinity, that features around the concept of what is now called the First Edict, which involves a revamp of the original Arbiter of Ash fight. We don't know what it's called now. We just know the motherfucker's got wings and he has a sweet-ass fucking spear. 2 new Ascendancy classes, 1 for the Monk, 1 for the Amazon. New Pinnacle bosses, new Pinnacle events that are based around these in-game encounters. Some of them are basically reskinned boss moves with a new fucking skin on them, and they call them a new encounter. Reinvestments and redesigns of the original storylines around all of the additional side content, which also involves this version of Runes of Aldur, which is basically considered to be a version of Delve. It is basically Delve combined with the new mechanics of Kalgor, and a giant reinvestment of a bunch of bullshit that is very hard to describe without showing it to you. So I will walk through that for you. Is PO2 designed for normies? No. It is designed for people to get more accessible to it. There is no world where a normie is going to be playing Path of Exile for fun, but considering that Asmongold made a video about it, and he's saying he's playing this, maybe that'll be the case. I don't know, Pip. Regardless, what they had to present on the podcast for the Path of Exile breakdown was a lot of stuff, and it's hard to describe without showing you. So before I do that, again, comments, questions, concerns that anybody wants to bring up right now. Speak now, forever hold your Carl. Yes, no, okay. Moving forward. Button. So what you're saying is that Path of Exile is for social exiles. It's for people who are tired of the experience that some of us are experiencing in Turtle WoW. Every time we want to go do something that involves a dungeon, we have to wait for there to be 4 other people around to go do it. And because of the nature of how parties work inside of a game like that of World of Warcraft, the fact that there can be 7 people online. In fact, how many people are online right now? There are 4 people online. So there are 4 people online right now in the guild. I am the second highest character in the guild at level 41 because Dev has been grinding to try and get ahead of me and is currently level 42. Behind me is Dave, and then another Dev Cordian user at 36. Naomi is at 35. Aaron is at 34. Madrybread is at 34. Yvonne is at 32. And then the hardest level drop-off from there is 10 levels down at 21 for a character ran by Walker. And then behind him at 21 as a Warlock is Numer. I don't know where they'll be in a week, because technically we have less than 6 days left now. But every time we want to run content in dungeons, it is going to be very hard for us to be able to actually get people from the world chat to work together, because they're in the doomer mode of just simply not wanting to do anything. So we have to have people online so we can run the content, and then Dev has to be online. Dev, Naomi, or Dave to record the content to get him the footage that he wants and needs. Hanging out, talking, doing all that shit. But it's technically work. And the stress that goes into the annoyance of some of the people who have never played a game like WoW before, jewing us out of drops, actively fighting people, people seeing us in the separated paid chat room, and then walking in and then making an entire stressful situation out of acting like retards, which you would have thought they would have not done that, but no. Dev Cordians find a way! It makes it stressful. Path of Exile is designed for people who like to have the fun of playing an MMO, but they like to play it at their own leisure, at their own pace. The same reasons somebody like myself, or Reflex Sight, would play Slay the Spire is the same reason people play Path of Exile. The difference is that when we want to get together and do it, we sit down, we do a run, we possibly do another run, and we can have the same fun as it would be taking all of you by the hand and taking you from level 1 to level 85 through the end game, and then telling you, okay, have fun. And releasing you to your devices. Probably more like 1 to 68. Releasing you to your devices. And then when I say, okay, in a week's time, we're going to get together and we're going to have a big crafting session. I could pick to go do Abyss. Who's in the room? Press my button. I could go do Abyss crafting. Limbera could go explore the new Kalgurin content. Master McFancy Pants might find himself fancying the new ritual. Reflex might Hello. Reflex might want to go in the direction of doing the newest in-game campaign story and getting access to all the shit in the Citadel at the same time as maybe doing a little bit of Breach. And then, his friend, whose name is escaping me because Restrainer mode is on, Roguelike, might be newer, and he might be, like, just running whatever and just doing normal maps. And then, in a week's time, when we convene together with our items in the league, and we trade amongst ourselves, we just have a bunch of shit that didn't involve us having to wait for somebody else to be online to go try it, to go do it, to go get it.
But also talking about me, I gotta go for a bit, but I might be able to join back later.
Okay.
Okay.
So, the word here is asynchronous. WoW is synchronous. Everybody's schedule has to line up in order for things to work out. World of Warcraft has always been synchronous. The only time it became technically asynchronous is when you have enough people playing the game that you can use something like Looking for Group to be able to source people into these parties. But the problem is that public parties, pub stomping, pub grinding, is a very atomizing experience. Atom. A-T-O-M. Atomizing experience. it grinds you down to a pebble because you get fucking tired of dealing with the bullshit. It's already enough of a problem when you got to do this and you're working with other people. It's even more annoying when you're doing it and it's for actual work. It's even more annoying when you're doing it for work and you're trying to have fun and someone's making it unfun for you, whether in the social sense or in the video game sense, or in Dev's case, for he needs to get this content done, but then somebody decides to take an important weapon or an important defensive upgrade that one of the front lines or one of the DPS characters need to do the damage to clear the dungeon. And while they're having fun in their version of the game, it's making it impossible for us to do the thing that Dev asked for. And thus, it becomes hard for him to get the things that he wanted, because he has to find more time and more dedication and more help to get it done. And it becomes a whole fucking thing. Same thing would happen if he wanted to do something involving old school RuneScape. Because watching somebody do content like this is what we call a snowflake account. Not because they're a special snowflake and they'd melt easily, but because it's a unique piece of content. But the process to get the recording for that content is hard. What we're doing right now is a version of that. So when Dev produces the video, how many of you will have been watching just my live stream? Because Dev has not been recording it, because he believes that's too much of what basically sucks the fun out of it for him, for it to be fun while it's still work. That for me, it would have been like, if the roles were reversed and I was making this, how many people would have been in the live streams while we were doing the setup to get these events going, to remember these moments in the Only Tards Guild? I hate the guild name that he chose, so I'm calling it Only Tards. In the Only Tards Guild, compared to watching the full video and whatever would have been in the content. It's a literal 1 to 10 ratio. There might be a person for every 10 people who would have wanted to do that. Why would I want to watch 1,200 hours of Carl trying to grind an item? I'd rather watch the 1 hour and 30-minute video. It's a better use of my time. That's the problem, at the end of the day. Games like Path of Exile were designed for people who wanted to play asynchronously from other people in the audience, and other people in their player base, and other people amongst the other broadcasters and streamers. Because half of the fun, as I then go back to the last screen, on the search engine here, because they already have the React screen out, half of the fun of the video game is that at the same time you have people watching the content reveal live and then watching the video of the content reveal because they can't be there live, there's also the overall crossover between the communities. Look at there being a Zizarin video on the recap of everything that's new in the video. The Exiled Again channel, that's basically a Clipper channel of all the who's who broadcasters and all their reactions to the live stream content the day of. This is the kind of thing that people view this kind of game for. All of these streamers, can't even recognize half of them. Steel Mage, Gazzy, Zizarin, Spicy Sushi, Quinn69, Mathel Vacation, Mathlog, Jorgen, all of those people, just like us, would be doing their own thing. And half the fun is that you can tune into Ziz, you can tune into Mathel, you can tune into Steel, and they're probably going to be doing 3 different things comparatively different than what they're doing. It's kind of like when I was grinding a lot of Helldivers. You could tune in and see me shitting down the neck of the enemy while carrying pubs to victory, while at the same time recording the content that would then become the background for what was supposed to be a part of how it's killed. And the only reason I fell off with that was obviously, as Boster already knows, is the attitude of the people in that player base. They really don't deserve having content creators. They don't care about their game being made. They're not really playing the video game. They're more agonizing about drama in their community. They would rather get a guy removed from his job and banned from a horse sanctuary than worrying about the fucking game itself and the health it has. And now it's a whole moderators of repression. They've sucked the fun out of it for people like myself. So I pulled back from it, and I'm putting myself into things that I care passionately about. One of which happens to be Path of Exile.
I do want to mention, when you mention the what essentially is the Reddit community with Helldivers and stuff. To anyone that says that Reddit is just Reddit, you can ignore them. Sure, you can. However, that does reflect the overall community as a whole. It does. It is one of the biggest platforms for just message boards and message posting comparatively to the actual Terraria fucking message boards. Like r/Terraria is much bigger than the Terraria forums by a long shot, and there might be overlap of users. But that just means that Reddit has more influence over people, and that if you just want to ignore Reddit, you can. But they do have an effect. Literally, Caleb Hammer made a video on how Reddit is just evil, and it is.
Yes.
Like, just want to mention that. So to anyone that says, "Oh, Reddit's just Reddit," ignore it. And it's the same thing towards Twitter. Twitter is Twitter. But like, the thing with Twitter is that it's so asynchronous to communities as a whole. Like, there are niche sub-communities, but since you don't have to fucking go on r/whatever, you can post whatever you want. It's just the type of For You page that you created, essentially, is what your communities are.
Yes. So, that being said, let's get into what they showed in the expansion. I wanted to show this off simply because this is probably the biggest expansion I've ever seen a video game ever make in history, let alone what they've done in Path of Exile history. So while I try to get my character aligned on the goddamn road so I can auto-walk. Inside of the announcement, they not only had 2 new Ascendancy classes, and obviously they're going to be doing an entire balance patch on all the shit accessible to the game. There is new League content, where they have reworked the system around how Kalgurin expedition / Kalgurin content is done. So, instead of a random atomizer, which was a bricking concept to the game, as in, you literally would get a remnant that would brick your fucking map. I can't deal damage to this enemy, I'm a cold build, and the gear and content that I want to get is literally surrounded by a node that says, enemies take no cold damage. They took that out of the game, and they instead made it a decision matrix. So instead of automatically getting arch nemesis-like affixes on your monsters as you're getting loot content, you now choose. And what it basically is it's rune words. It's basically rune words. It's basically Diablo 2 rune words. But it's not putting runes inside of the altar. It's a pre-selected list of runes that when you come across the encounter, and more encounters through the campaign, all the way until a point in the end game, you are going to have the ability to craft using these rune words to get outcomes. So, for the people who are familiar with the Menagerie and the Blood Font with beast crafting with Einhar from Exile 1, this is a combination of that system. But instead of collecting beasts, you're just collecting the rune words. It's basically the exact system that they implemented here. It's not that complex, but it can get more complex. Rune words can be basically activated in a chain when you're doing a full, what they now call Grand Expedition map, which is another way of saying Boating League. Because since the end of the game's Cataclysm, it shows that King's March is in ruins. And Gwenin, somehow, the fucking whitest woman on this side of the goddamn Ray-class continent, got lost at sea, and we have to go fucking rescue her. Because they have to make us care about the white woman. This is still in line with content with recombination, so you still do expeditions to get access to exploding caches, to find the material necessary for stacking it. They have implemented the fragment tab, finally, so now you no longer have to keep up 5 tabs worth of fragments, 5 tabs worth of precursor tablets, 7 tabs worth of the fragments that are coming from the Kalgurin content. It just goes immediately in there. You still have to use that to use recombination, but now remnants create rune words that allow you to upgrade your content directly and immediately. Immediate access to power through the content of the game, alongside an update to how ward works, so that ward now functions as a layer under your life that protects you from death, similar to blue life. Those are most of the things coming out of the Kalgurin content. Shit can get wild, because in a normal encounter in a map, you're going to have up to at least 5. But in the encounters that you can see in the endgame, you can get up to 8. Every time a remnant is activated, that remnant has a chance of carrying on a Kalgurin rune in the chain to the next chain. It's the exact way that remnant already worked, but now it comes with the consequence of basically a similar form of, how do I describe this? Arch Nemesis affix stealing. So this is related to the content cycle for something related to Metamorph that was then rolled into Arch Nemesis that is a part of the system that they use in Abyss. In Abyss, when a monster is killed in a room, it has a chance of having one of its modifiers become a Lich modifier. It's basically the Nemesis system. This system takes the affix of the rune. So if it's the Storm rune, it can be connected to lightning, or the Rebirth rune, which can be connected to life. You can have a remnant in a chain with a rune word, take a rune off of the chain, and add it to an affix on the next monster in the line. And then take another affix and add it to another monster in the line. Having up to what I believe the broadcast said could be upwards of 60 different affixes, which is obviously basically saying you're going to have a bad time. But if you're strong enough to do it, lots and lots of content, lots and lots of money, because they've also created different levels of buffs that in the end game are going to increase your rarity drop pool by a significant margin, as an additional bonus on top of the bonuses that are already going to be a part of that system. So you're basically looking at them designing and making it juicier. They made it really juicy. They made it really, really rewarding to try to do this. So challenging yourself to see how far your damage can carry you and how much money you can make off of them is half the goal of what it's looking for. Because when you get the rune words and you get the material that the runes come with from the remnants, you get the ability to not only add affixes, but also to create runic ward on the items. Some items are direct upgrades, like the Black Braid Runeforge fur plate that's on the screen. Sometimes the rune word will just be added to the item directly. It will let you be able to make the equipment as a straight upgrade. But once you get to the end game, and you're dealing with certain types of weapons and armor, like the Brass Dome, you can be trading armor for runic ward. And there are skills in the game, called Burn skills, that work off of that runic ward. Because the skills are augmented and basically fueled by ward, the same way mana fuels the skills and the gems, or your particular resource fuels your kit, you can now have access to not only transformative gems and access to additional gems, but you can now also have access to transformative systems, and all these systems together give you the idea of how strong you can become versus how strong you potentially could be if you were willing to make a sacrifice to rebuild. So this is an alternate form of item design. You do not have to have it. If you can get some, it's great. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. It's one more system that you can interact with and interface with that can be strong. For example, the Frostflame Nova on screen basically is a way for an Ignite build to get access to crowd control, because everything that you ignite will be reignited again, reapplying your fire damage, and then it will make them stack up freeze. So the same way that Chaotic Freeze and Chaotic Chill already interact with each other as an archetype, you now have the ability to use Fire and Ice together as an archetype. So that means that you can get damage from your fire and get CC from ice, and you can increase the effectiveness of this crowd control on bosses as well as for enemies, not just for clear, but also for active methods of defensive layers, which is a significant increase for casters, because some casters just need it. They want it, and they need it, and they have to have it. Because without it, they are basically trying to deal more damage than the enemies and the layers of enemies that are running at them. And sometimes your defenses just aren't enough, and you're going to be expected to take a hit. And this is one of those ways that you can prevent yourself from taking those hits, should you be using one of those type of caster builds. Assuming you don't already have 5 lines worth of blue shield, which is wild. Yes.
You're not showing it to the Discord, by the way.
Okay.
You're still showing your notes.
Okay, that's fine. I'll fix it in a second. 1 second.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
I was trying to see if that was the case, but I will fix it right now. I'm fixing it now. It is fixed.
There you go.
Additional changes that they've made, or additional accesses that they've made, is that they've allowed for different types of existent tools to be used, especially for applying the power of damage in greater areas, like the Triskelion Cascade, which basically makes it go out in a Triskelion pattern, which really is a way of saying a icicle snowflake pattern. You get to cast the spell, you cast enough of the spell that you then empower it, and then it creates the echoing effect that allows you to basically make the damage come out perfectly as you want it. It's very similar to something called the Sire of Stars, which used to change your casting from being in a direct line to being in a circle around you. This now makes it basically take a formation and a pattern around you, that if what you want to do is put yourself in the center of damage and then release havoc on the map, that is one thing you can do. Also from the current expansion, or rather, alongside the Calgarian expansion, there are various forms of shell effects, like Hollow Shell, where you can grant your minions and yourself and your allies Runic Ward to protect their health. You can use Mark of Repulsion to create a pushback effect that activates off the same ailment threshold features that are connected to your skills. They are items that only care about ward. They only care about the activation cost of ward. They are basically colorless. They can go anywhere. They can be linked with anything. There are no restrictions to how they can be used. They don't care about level requirements, or rather, level is the only thing they care about. They don't care about stats.
So, like in a hardcore setting, can you get a lesser rank so it can save lives?
Yes, actually. In fact, one of the changes here on the screen is that you can be able to use a type of skill that enables your build to have more survivability. So on screen here, on the first example, you have an example of a transformation warrior who's using the bear skills alongside the runic skills to basically apply crowd control effects for them to weave in and out of the environment before they can re-engage. In a hardcore environment, that is literally the difference of life and death. Because in Exile 1, one of the things that actually kills you is bunching. Most of the time, you want to clear everything at once, so you let it come towards you in a circle, and then you use your clear skill to basically burst the entire screen. In Exile 2, you want to go fast, but you can't, because if you go too fast, you'll get overwhelmed by enemies surrounding you, you'll take way too many hits, you won't have enough faster block rate in order to recover from block, and you'll basically be stuck in a blocking animation, and you'll die. Hello, Bloodia. And in this system... Sorry.
I real quick, the reason why I asked, like, in a hardcore setting, could this save lives? I'm making a joke at Pirate's expense because he was talking about the lesser rank of, I think it was Blizzard.
Yes.
Or Frostnova, one of the two.
Yes, actually. That's actually something that we do all the time. Sometimes you only need to have a certain level of the skill. So you don't need to have the maximum level for damage. You just need to have enough that it's relevant. Especially if you need to fit it in because of slot requirements. So yes, actually that's very relevant.
That's good. That's good. It was just because he went on about how taking the lesser rank of the one skill can save lives even if it's not damage, but like the slowing effect or something, and it's just like doesn't use it during the moment where it should be used.
Yep.
Which honestly, he could have just said, "Oh, oops, my bad, guys." And I'm not gonna lie, that right there should have just been saying, "Oops, I casted the wrong spell, my bad." Could have saved him everything.
It's kind of like something I was explaining to them when we were actually on that subject matter, where the problem with Pirate Software wasn't just him ratting on his team. It was an intentional, petty desire to ensure that they got killed because he wanted to be a little asshole about it.
Yeah.
But I digress. Anyways.
Sorry. Continue.
So, the Transformation Warrior is using some of the guard effects and the slowing effects to give them greater clear with these packs. Because he can get closer to the enemy without being overlapped by all of them at once. So that you can basically slam them and deal your transformation damage while at the same time dealing your human form damage. Then, in the next clip, you've got a mercenary using bow style that's using a similar skill to basically give them the ability to weave into the packs and not only avoid damage but also manage the pack adds while they're dealing with a particularly annoying boss. On top of that, you have Runic Infusion support gems that, because they don't follow any particular rule other than specifically requesting consumption of ward, can fit into a build like this. This looks like a regular two-handed forge user that's using Rolling Hammer as their main damage. They stick in Runic Infusion into a build that already is running off of Fist of War and Earthquake and what I can only assume is Heavy Swing and Lacerate. Great damage effect, and for every 20 additional maximum runic ward that the skill uses when it attacks, because Rolling Slam attacks twice, and Aftershock makes the shock effects happen up to 2 times if it succeeds the 35% max roll on the Aftershock cost on self-casting, to deal equal to 50% of the runic ward that is used every time you press the button. So if you take 20% of your maximum runic ward, which is a build that's asking you to probably put on a lot of different pieces for survivability, probably an evasion, strength, entropy build, where you're trying to dodge most damage, and then you tank most damage to your face, and then you leech it. It is going to ask you to spend 20% of your maximum underlying ward that's protecting your health, so that you can then deal 50% of that cost at the enemy for your damage tree, which is going to give you the ability to possibly burst an entire pack if you have enough ward. You also have to have enough defenses to manage to do this, which is why it's a gamble. But new skills are fun. People like trying new things. At the same time, they have other effects that are coming through with it, such as Concussive Runes and Runic Infusion, which is getting demonstrated here on the use of Asunder. They also have examples with the overall usage and discovery of the zones, where you're going to be finding more and more of these through the main line of the campaign. They also are introducing a system alongside the runic stuff where you're going to be able to upgrade your weapons that are considered starter tier, the kind of items that you might get luckily in Act 1, so that you can scale them to the end game. So here, one of the examples is the Amor Mandragoria Runeforce Changeling Talisman. This is a Transformation Shaman's spellcasting talisman. It is designed for you to spend mana and get skill effect duration while you're attacking with the Changeling talisman, with your attack slams, or your wolf slams, or your wyvern cleaves, so that every time you cast, you get druidic prowess for the rage that you spend, so that you can swap between an attack formation of casting and then a transformation form of casting. In the early game, I ain't gonna do shit with 2642 once I approach Act 3. But 111 to 174, I can work with that. This is kind of important when you get to Ritual, but we gotta get there first. Any version of any Kalgurin item has basically this upgrade. So one of the examples is the Double Vision Dyad Crossbow. Once it gets Runeforged, it gets elevated as well. Sorel's Gift, which appears to be a new physical thorn hammer, is another case example of one of the newer uniques that they're implementing into the game this patch. And then, on the choices of all of the different runes that exist, they have added over what they said was 100 different runes. But basically, they're single-line runes that have a special effect on them. So, Warding Rune of Protection, and the warding, the Archaic Rune of Animosity, the Archaic Rune of Prowess, the Archaic Rune of Splinters, the Archaic Rune of the Titan, the implicit inscriptions that you could use these particular effects should you want to use these combinations with these particular rune words that you're learning. This is what it looks like when you're choosing them. It's basically the exact same as if you just look at the list, pick one off the list like it's a shopping list, and say, okay, I don't want to deal with this challenge that comes with running this rune, so I'm going to pick this one, and I'm happy. That's as easy as you can interact with the system, and getting more complex with the system is at your leisure. Into the rolling runes and the different kind of runes they have available, they have an assortment of the early game ones and the end game ones. The ones that are just normal are warding runes. The ones that are the end game are archaic runes. There are even runes that can do metacrafting, such as the Breath of Aldur. You take it, you put it in a weapon, it can transform things that are elemental, based on fire and lightning, to equivalent cold modifiers. So, you can take a weapon that has a lot of physical and a lot of elemental scaling, specifically fire and lightning. So tier 1 fire, tier 1 lightning, but maybe on your roll, you ended up rolling a tier 3 cold, and you don't want the fire and lightning rolls. You take one of your sockets in the weapon, you put it in the weapon, and you transform those modifiers, and you upgrade that weapon out of the gate. It is relatively expensive. It has been promised to be difficult, but it does the full operation directly. So if you have a considerably, quote, perfect weapon, putting this in is not going to reroll the stats. It doesn't work like an essence. It works as a direct meta mod. Very fun, very cool. There are also gems that do things like you are sacrificing the ability to put runes in the item to create a jewel socket, so that you can put a jewel inside the weapon instead. Another meta mod transformation. Very exciting. Very cool. There are even things that allow you to affect the ability to roll modifiers on certain items by adding the chance to roll certain modifiers specialized to that rune. This is Uthrid's Sidrus. By putting this into a boot, you enable the ability for it to roll chronomancy modifiers. And then, once you put it in, and you start rolling it with Chaos, you get the ability to roll things such as the rolls for things like increased cooldown recovery. So on builds that want to focus around things like cooldown, I'm okay, Bloodia. You'll have to go backwards in the stream to see what I was talking about earlier, because we've already revised it twice, and now we're on to the coverage of what I was doing yesterday. But for things like casters, if you have cooldown recovery, you get your cooldowns back. For people that want to worry about having cooldown efficiency, it allows you to get your defensive guard buttons back. And yes, those guard buttons will save your life. The difference between having a 2500 shield on a 10-second cooldown versus having a 2500 shield with 2 charges that recover faster on what effectively becomes a 3-second cooldown is a world of difference when you're talking about an elongated boss fight where that button is about to block a slam. Power software can never. There are also alloys, which act like a form of, they act like a form of essence. This part of the system is a little bit bloated, mainly because it is using the system of veils. It's going to remove a random modifier, and then it's going to augment the rare item with a new guaranteed modifier. These are not hard to get, but they are also going to be hard to apply, because you're going to have to think about how you're going to apply these things in these situations you craft them. It's very much a crafty-esque League content, and that's because it's by design. Kalgurans are basically Diablo's blacksmiths. They use rune words, so part of exploring the events and figuring out how to use them is going to be a part of the reward factor of this particular part of the League. So, here, it's showing off what it looks like when you're doing the normal expedition reveals. On this screen, you can see what I'm talking about when I said it was basically a choose at your leisure rune word. On this version, which is a version of the endgame tree, it gives you a choice of uncut skill gem, lesser rebirth runes, mind runes, and ward runes. And on those possible combinations, it then adds difficulty through the rune that is being ascribed. Once you add that rune to that chain, it's going to increase the difficulty of the encounter once that chain is activated. You kill the enemies as normal, just like you would in the campaign when it's a singular monolith that you're interacting with. But then, once you are ready to progress the chain, a button appears on the monolith that allows you to now inherit one of those runes to the enemy. So here, on this monolith, the Rune of Change and the Rune of Mind are the only two options that are here. There is an accent over the Rune of Change. That is the rune that will be inherited to the next line. When you're ready, rather than the chain blasting through automatically as it used to, which was better for clear speed, but some people, they weren't ready. Because it's for people who like to pause. They have designed a system, and they're trying to implement a system where now when you pause, you can mouse over things, and you can see what things do. So that you're not just blindly guessing. But when the blue button gets pressed, the Rune of Change will inherit to the next part of the line, and the chain will continue as normal. So now, the next group have gotten the Rune of Change applied to them, and it's made the encounter a little bit harder. And then the same thing happens again, and you inherit it again to the next blast chain, and you not only get the reward that came from the monolith, but you also get the chance of inheriting it forward to the next encounter. I hope that makes sense. It's basically a gamble by any other word. On the content away from that, because of the fact that this is based on Kalgurans and King's March is a trading hub, the town itself is now a hub on the Atlas. You can go to it as a location, and then you get the ability to interact with the encounters in the location. And they are now the ones that are a part of the Seafaring Expedition. So rather than creating window loot, where in Boat League, in Exile 1, you were helping build King's March, and then King's March became a fully fleshed town in later expansions, and then in King's March inside of Exile 2, it became Act 4, it becomes a trade hub on the in-game map, where you now use the boats that they originally shipped off, that was the window loot trade that you were doing while you were mapping. Now, you go onto the sea, and you go on seafaring expeditions on a grand expedition. Again, I hope that makes sense. You no longer just send the boat away, and then 4 hours later, you get loot back. You go on the boat, onto the ocean, and you explore it at your pace. There's an entire quest chain connected to it. I'm fast forwarding through it because I want you guys to at least find the important parts. And the important parts is that when you get logbooks now, the logbooks don't open up itemized locations. They reveal new parts of the map. So this is the part of the map that's basically Delph. You do all this in this grand epic quest chain that takes you all over the ocean so that you can encounter different versions of bosses that have now been encountered and interacted with. You then get to bring down a meteorite. You then get to bring down Olroth. You then get to have access to his drops. You get to have access to newer forms of rune words and rune combinations. And then eventually you fight a fucking meteorite monster. The best way I can describe this is imagine that Verizium is phase. You get to fight a fucking phase beast. And that's basically the Kalguran expansion that's going to be a part of the potentially core League content. Everything else is an updated storyline. So the next thing that they show is the updated storyline that has to do with the new main story of the Atlas in terms of Atlas progression for this giant fucking citadel. There are different changes and different upgrades that have been made to it. And we now have a giant transformative skill tree. It starts from the bottom and it goes to the top. The entire skill tree will be acclimated. You no longer have to make choices on the tree. You get everything. Well, that's a lie, actually. No, that's actually halfway a lie. You do get to make choices. It's that you have the entire tree at your disposal and you can craft it the way that you want it with the outcomes that you have. I apologize. I was misleading you slightly. It's not so much that you're grinding down your choices to being like you will have to choose between 3 specific buttons, and they're all the same flavor of get loot, and get loot, but slower. It's that you're making choices about how you want to go about doing things. So the emphasis of a lot of this content, and this right here is the version of that tree, the big expansive one that leads to the top all the way from the bottom that it's currently showing on camera, that is the actual tree itself for the content. All of the other ones on the bottom, that's the side content of the other storylines, of the other core content loops of bonus content. That's the expedition, on the Kalguran trees. That's the temple agments for Atziri and the storyline of 0.4 that was just implemented from the temples for incursion. That is your delirium. That is your breach. That is your ritual. That is your abyss. So those ones are separate from that. And they revamped those two as well. They added more points and they added more levels of actual investment, because the way it was before, it literally was the 3 choices of get loot, but slower. This entire tree will have different choices and different options, like being able to face multiple copies of bosses at the same time from multiple factions while you're clearing the endgame map, which gives you the ability to get the loot from those bosses twice. There is different modifiers that will give you powerful boss add-ons, so that since it is now core that there is a map boss in every map, where before it used to be a chance that there was a map boss, and then a chance that that map boss was considered to be a powerful boss. When you get a powerful boss additional spawn, you get to have 3 choices, and those choices actually matter. They are not just additional content that adds more potential experience at best, or rather at worst, and more potential valuable loot drops at best. It is choices about how you want to actually pull the levers of power to access how you would like to build your character, and how you would like to build your mapping experience. Some allow you to favor yourself, some allow you to favor the enemy to make the bosses more damaging and deadly, in trade for more loot. You can switch these on and off at your leisure. One of the obvious things to me is that when you get favor the hero, you're going to be able to make it so that you can use the shrine buffs to clear the bosses faster when you first get into maps. And then, when you're strong enough that you do not need the shrine buffs, you can turn on favor the villain and basically give yourself more gear. It's very straightforward. There's no misunderstanding it. To say earlier, when Pip jokingly said, this is made for normies, this is like the normie aspect. Because one of the biggest complaints they kept getting was that there was too many choices, and they didn't understand the choices. So this is what we get in return for that choice. It's already fine how it was before. They just made it better, while also making it more accessible for those players. Then, when you get to the content, and you fight the boss, and you do all the stuff that is involved with all of the particular zones and different content that is available, and you finally get the chance to face off against the boss, when you've cleared the sections of the tower, when you decide you want to finish one of the areas in the Citadel, a beam gets shot out across the map and will automatically complete all the maps in that sector that you pushed. What that means is as the animation shows here, you can walk over to a place on the concourse that you may have been or that you haven't been to. You press the button and you automatically clear the maps. What that means is that this is a trade-off. What the button does is that it auto-completes the maps, because each of those maps contain the atlas points to upgrade the tree. If you run the maps yourself, you're getting the points and the potential loot. If you choose to press the button, you are foregoing the loot in favor of automatically completing and thus pushing your tier of the skill tree. Does anybody find that confusing? No? Not at all? Echo, echo, echo.
Sorry, I decided to go to the store to get stuff for spaghetti.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing right now.
I was reading the chat at the same time too. It's okay. It's not all on you.
Fair enough.
But What that basically means is it's a trade-off. You can have the money that comes from the map and the points that come from the map. Or if you're just like, I don't want to do all that extra shit, that's busy work, I want to push the content, this is the choice. You get the skill points, but you lose the loot. You get the loot from the maps and the skill points, but it's going to take time to clear them. Since this is geared all together in the same tree, should you make that choice, you can then get higher and higher on the skill tree to add more fixes to your maps. So if you think it's more valuable for you to just skip the parts that aren't as valuable for you to run, you can get to those points that matter the most, so you can start getting more profit sooner and faster. There's a little bit of method to the madness here, if you choose to do that way. Essentially, if the first tier of maps, because the way that they've segmented out this list, it's very clear which parts are gray, which parts are yellow, and which parts are red. Red is endgame maps that are 11 through 15, yellow is mid-game maps, which are 6 through 10, and gray is 1 through 5. If pushing your tier from gray maps to yellow maps would make you stronger, you can basically immediately scale yourself up by getting through all the parts that you need to have. I can see that on the right side and on the left side. You have essences and you have Asmeri spirits. They made Asmeri spirits really strong in this patch for lots of different reasons, especially on the new Ascendancy class for the Spirit Walker for the Amazon. So, if your build involves you using essences to build weapons, and you just need to find a good weapon so that you can have it to start your climb, and you get to the point where you're strong enough that you no longer need to do tier 5 maps in the zone, and you can immediately start scaling to yellow, you can forego doing 1 to 5 gray map zones, so you can get all of the points of the next tier, and start farming the beginning of 6 through 10. As you go through, and you take these choices, they are now submitting a type of master to the maps involving Jadot and Creighton and Hilda as what they call Atlas Masters. Really, it's Atlas skill trees. Each of them have different types of missions. Hilda will want to send you to go kill bosses that are enemies and monsters. Jadot will want to give you rewarding content where you get the chance to run extra modifiers on maps, for example, giving your map bosses a guaranteed unique item to scale faster, and the ability to make your strong boxes in your maps appear more often, because every unique item that you can usually find from yellow rare chests and magic chests than you can normal chests, just like you can loot. You add more chests and more potential drops of items that could be good for you, as well as now adding a chance for your strong boxes to have chances to be unique, which alongside some of the new cross-pollination content means you're giving yourself an ability chance to get all of those new unique strongbox outcomes that were added about 4 patches ago. Things that add rares, things that add guaranteed uniques from certain levels of content, things that give you multiple drops of jewels, things that give you multiple respawns of a boss that adds more rarity chance the more times it gets respawned, and the Researcher Strongbox, which gives you as many chances to roll up to 6 as you have gold to potentially get a powerful outcome, where you could get something useful, or you could get something useless. Literally pure item gambling. All of these different things are at your leisure, designed around the archetype that that particular master offers. For Hilda, it's rewards through bossing. For Jadot, it's rewards through bonus content. For his name is slipping my mind. For Doriani, It is the ability to push your tier of your mapping tree. So, progressing, juicing, and upgrading, as well as item finding. All of these different masters have their purposes and have their interests. For example, if you choose to go with Hilda and you use the Monster Guild, very similar to literally Monster Hunter, she has a chance of making a 25% chance appear for your map bosses to become powerful. If you tie this in together with tree choices, such as the transformation to guarantee that a powerful map boss can have something like a strongbox, a summoning circle, or an essence, you can use this with cross contamination tactics to put this in with other content. I'll double back on this when we get to Ritual, because Ritual has an example of how this functions. A live example. But for simplification, if you want your bosses to give you more loot, you would go Hilda. If you want to have a better chance to clear through your maps and to progress your mapping tier faster, you would use Doryani. If you wanted more gear in your maps and more opportunities, more levers to pull to get gear in your maps, you would use Jado. All these things together can basically become very powerful choices should you want to take access to these things. So, for example, within Hilda has the chance to make your boss encounters a one-shot. One door, one try. But if you succeed, you get 2 items from the unique pool, rather than just 1. The example on screen is Breach of Yashult. It dropped a copy of Hands of Action, and it dropped a copy of Zoph's Blood. If you didn't have that augment, you would have to run this boss twice. So now, you're increasing the efficiency, but you're also increasing the risk, which is a fair trade-off. This is everything people like myself and other incoming players that want to push the difficulty would want. And, rather than the kind of system that people would have been familiar with in the past, the system that currently exists, as they've implemented it, is that you'll have up to 4 choices. On those choices, you don't have to take one tier and then take another tier. You have 4 rows of 3. In total, that gives you, Carl's bad at math, 16, 3, 6, 9, 12. Carl is bad at math, 12 lines of potential choices between the different masters. When you make your choices, you can then flip between them on the fly. So let's say, for example, you wanted to use Jado's Spycraft to go hunting for extra effect of your precursor tablets, so you can juice your maps for more content. You just click on Jado, and you're ready to go. Let's say, once you finish farming 10 maps with Jado, you want to switch to Hilda. Well, all you gotta do is click on Hilda, and the choices she has get automatically applied. On the setting they had on the screen, they had a Jado that was created for juicing precursor outcomes and putting more rare chests in his maps. On this Hilda's hunting, she has been augmented to give unique monsters releasing spirits on death, so that you can be able to juice the Edmund's spirits and combine them with powerful map bosses, as well as making it so that Asmeri spirits cannot be possessed by rare monsters. What this does is that you're guaranteeing that the spirits will release when you kill a boss, so that you can juice the map boss and reverse clear the map. Maybe there's a special encounter that involves tactics using rogue exiles, for example. A rogue exile is considered a super unique. So, the wisp that will appear in the map, either randomly or by chance, is going to try to go find a rare enemy in the map. And as it passes through those enemies, it's not possessing them. It's just overshadowing them. So you're making the map twice as powerful for drop rate. Because every enemy that gets pushed through and empowered by the Wisp eventually increases its full drop tier, because it has a percentage. Every enemy it passes through, it adds to a percentage that it's building up the rarity of. It does it for the Vivid, it does it for the Primal, it does it for the... what is the blue one? Blue is Vivid. Red is Primal. I'm forgetting what yellow is. Red, blue, yellow. It does it for all of them. And then the very rare ones, which are orange. As it moves through the enemy gets its tier of damage enhanced, and it's also getting its tier and potential gear enhanced. If it can't possess a rare enemy, it's going to possess the unique enemy. If it possesses the unique enemy, it's then going to have a higher chance of dropping the best loot. And then it's going to release the spirit again, and then go find another unique to possess. Which means you're double juicing the map. You're juicing the monsters, the normals and the magics and the rares. But you're also juicing the uniques and the super uniques. So your map boss, Badoom, is going to become infinitely more powerful. Because the map boss becomes more powerful, what Hilda does is Jadot says, I want to juice the normal outcomes of regular shit. What Hilda does is, this map, I'm going to make it into a giant smorgasbord. And if you wanted to flick between those two, you click on them. And then, should you just think, fuck, all that shit's too hard, I just want to get through the map, you go to Doriani. This Doriani is set up so that you have an additional reliable. So if you die in the map, you've got +1 door. Your waystones either have a +25 more effect on the prefix, or a +25 more effect on the suffix. Prefix are the helpful mods. Suffix are the dangerous mods that the enemies get. You either get better efficiency on the things that are going to give you drop rate, pack size, and loot rarity, or you're juicing the monsters and indirectly giving yourself more rarity on the monsters, but it's also enhancing the damage that they could potentially do to you. Or enhancing the effect that the monsters will have nearby your character. It's a trade-off either way, but usually you can manage it. The Ensmeri spirits will only possess things when they reach maximum empowerment. So, unlike the guarantee that you get from doing it with someone like Hilda, you get a chance of potentially having it be that they only possess a monster when they reach maximum empowerment. So it will possess rares, but it will only possess them when it's wandered long enough. So it has to get all the way to 100, and then you'll get at least a guaranteed one. So Hilda's is juice, whereas Doriani's is consistency, and Jadot's is lever pulling for more loot. I hope that makes sense. From there, as you play through that encounter in that campaign, you'll then get different access to all the other different zones in the map. Something that they definitely made clear, alongside changing the way the content works, is that every zone of content that is based on a storyline has a visual zone confirmation for what they do. They have a hub, and they have literal parts of the map that are very clearly belonging to that content. On the screen here, you've got the example of the version of what is the Delirium. It's encased in fog. Then, another zone, the zone that belongs to Breach, it's got a bunch of Breach hands coming out of the ground. You can visually see it on the map. And then another one is the one conquered by Adziri. That's got a bunch of Adziri temples involving in it. And then, if they have the one here for the cracks for... Yes, they do. And the ones that have the cracks for the content are going to have the encounters in the zone around the hub of the monsters. So, here they have the one for Abyss. How do I know that it's Abyss? The giant fucking green cracks coming out of the ground. You can visually understand what it is. This was a change that was made because it used to be that the icon would hover over the map. You would only know what content was in the map based on the little icon. That was kind of okay in the beginning, but it was not appropriate for an audience that was designed to be people who probably were having their first time in an ARPG. It was very illegible. It was very difficult to read, very difficult to understand, and very difficult to know everything that was going on. If I moused over it and showed you, you would be confused. So they made it visually imperative that the zone of the content that you're doing is rewarding the content that you're doing. Because the original system of the mapping tree was that the original reward for doing the endgame was that you were trying to defeat a higher tier version of what was called a corrupted altar. You had to do a map that had at least 4 modifiers on them. You basically were thus only given 3 chances to clear that map. And then, as you continued juicing your tier, you could then increase it to 1, or you increase it from 3 to 2 to 1 chance, so that it became 1 door, 1 life. And this way, what they did is that they took the pressure off of just pure difficulty, and they instead put it onto accessible and scaling difficulty. Doing it this way means that you can now pick when you choose to take difficulty and when you choose to take reason. So, for things like Abyss, when you want to do Abyss content and only Abyss content, as you continue clearing through the maps that has it, it eventually will take you to a guaranteed abyssal depth. You can still get them by random chance, but you can also now just get the content, which allows you to finally access the endgame content that is available through Kurlamak's finger for his invitation to the Well of Souls to eventually take on the encounter of the Vessel of Kurlamak. Therefore, instead of, oh, I have a random chance where I could possibly go do it, and it's gone! It is instead the case that if you want to do the content that is based around the Well of Souls, you go to the Well of Souls, and you're guaranteed to have the opportunity to find the material, and to find the content, and to do it, and you're not being put in a position where you're fucked over. This is reflected for all of the content. So from here, they then start explaining the Delirium timeline of its in-game content, where they now have named the character that has been taunting us. His name is Tang Mazu. He is a brother of one of the gods from Path of Exile 1. He has always been a part of the Delirium content, but they have fully reworked how Delirium works. How it now works is that it is tied to a character that we meet in the campaign in Act 4. Act 4? Act 2? Act 3? No, interludes. That we meet in the interludes, known as Elder Maddox. Elder Maddox is who we meet in Crier Peaks. He is sitting there, and he gives you your Diablo guaranteed unique from a window loot tree. He is tied to the content now, Tong Mazu, so that you can go do Delirium. He's got an entire storyline, and the important part that is the rework of this is that instead before, where you used to just have a counter that showed you how many enemies you've killed in order for you to get content and to do shit, it now instead has a tracker. The tracker shows you how deep into the Delirium that you are, and the deeper in the Delirium that you go, in the direction that you need to get to the map boss, allows you to basically read your map. If you go in the direction of the arrow, as it progresses on the screen, it will take you in the direction of all the things that are happening as you're facing that content. And so, doing that will give you the ability to actually map through Delirium better. Because what most people treat it as is open the mirror, get extra monsters, try to push for extra loot, but not really be able to complete it because you can't tell where you're going. Because you are trying to clear quickly, but you have to clear quickly with some level of knowing where you need to go to get more content. So instead of these random fucking mirrors that push you back and basically impede your progress, these mirrors now add effects to the Delirium and to the monsters that are in the zone. For example, the mirror from before basically creates the monsters having a higher difficulty. Then in this one, in a reuse of some map design from Path of Exile 1, dealing with the Elders, you get to go into a red map that is a reflection of the Swamp of Misery. Doing that will give you access to a double infused necklace. And then later down the line of the tree, once you eventually find the zone, you will have to interact with content to face the in-game boss, and then you'll have to chase him down. You'll have to fight through his arena. You'll have a chance with Delirium to fight guaranteed double mirrored bosses, which gives you twice the loot and twice the content, to eventually fight him in a zone that is similar to Atlas Memories. You get to select a place on the world map where you can go interact with content. And when you go do that content, you get to go into a zone that is a reworked and revamped version of the original Delirium. One of the problems with Delirium, especially the oldest problem with Delirium, is Delirium was wave-based content. It's technically still wave-based content, but it's not the kind of wave-based content you would have expected. It's now wave-based content where instead of clicking a button and rolling the content, you actually just move through the zone and you survive, just like you're clearing a map. You make it through the map, you get to face Tongmazu, he gives you the Raven's reflection and gives you the missing piece of the mask, and then you get to face him inside of his area, and you fight him in a penultimate encounter. Simple stuff. Simple stuff. You get into the endgame version, where it now expands the map even further. You get to do more maps that have more connections and more cross-pollination with other content and other materials. And then you get to fight a harder version of the boss. So you get a quest-based version, and you get a endgame version. This is miles better than what you used to have both in Exile 1 and Exile 2. I'm actually fully impressed that they did this for Delirium, because historically, it has always been the hardest content, because the Delirium mechanic always made enemies harder. The more Delirium you have stacked on the map, because it was always in percentage of how delirious the map made you. A 20% delirious map was more dangerous than a 0% delirious map, but a 100% delirious map was basically in-game, this will kill you unless you're broken tier builds that prevented people from getting access to the same level of value of loot that other people were getting. What it appears that they've done here, and we won't know until we get our hands on it, it appears that they've taken away the percentage delirious, and the map is just considered delirious. So it's no longer scaled on the additional delirium tree. It's instead scaled on map tier. So if you're in a delirious level 5 map with a mirror of delirium inside of it, it is going to be less dangerous than a tier 15. But a bare, gray, no affix mod tier 15 map will not be as dangerous as a 6 affix rare tier 15 map. And if you were to break the scale limit and to make it into a corrupted 16 tier map, that would be more dangerous as a 3 affix compared to a 5 affix versus a fully juiced tier 16, 8 mod affixed, completely busted to the tier possible version you could run using Doriani's science. Which is just ways of saying, the further down the juicing tier you go, the more difficult the content's supposed to be. Before in the past, the gateway to that tier was having a build that basically could obsolete the content and do everything. Because the mechanic that you're supposed to get from this is supposed to be the liquid emotions. If you can't kill the enemies, you can't get the loot. So they took away the overhead difficulty that was being a barricade to this content, and they reworked it so that you can actually be able to engage with it, instead of saying, I can't do Delirium right now, I'm gonna go do Breach. Because it was just a foregone conclusion that you were too weak automatically. So this makes it more accessible, and it makes it something that if you want to do it immediately out of the gate day one, you can. And it's not fucking abysmal, where you get no loot, and you get all the difficulty with none of the payoff. Again, I hope that makes sense.
It does, and honestly, I would prefer developers trying to rework content where it actually gets played and not what Destiny 2 did and just outright fucking get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, to
Because
levels...
that is a problem.
Yeah, it is. With Exile 2, they really care about that because if the content's not getting played, then they're going to rework it more than remove it. If they remove something, they're going to remove the hardest difficulty of it. They're not going to remove it outright. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that are important with that is this is a combination of two systems from Exile 1. It is the instilling tree of the blight mechanic alongside the mechanic of delirium dropping monsters that create the items that need to be encountered. The problem that was happening is that people didn't run delirium content, so there were no liquid emotions to be traded or sold, and getting to run your own to get a chance to do it just was not fun. So they did this to make it so that you could get access to it. Some of those things can now be accessible to create effects that on screen give you things like having access to fully broken armor, inflicting cold and lightning damage taken from hits as notables that you can put onto your necklaces. Or even this new effect that applies to spells called Colm's Blessing, where the next fire spell you cast yourself after you use a Warcry gets ancestrally boosted. Which basically makes it so that literally you have an area full of damage that gets greater AoE, greater damage, and it's got the fucking crystallize effect that all ancestral slams get. Very graphically interesting and very, very fun. They have expanded these trees, as I discussed before, and instead of being trees that have you do up to 3 different levels of encounters, instead you have now up to 36 on the Delirium tree, you've got like 31 on the Breach tree, you've got like 35 or 31 on the Abyss tree, and so on, where you have different little pieces that let you build the way that you want to engage with the particular content in a way where you're able to create benefits for yourself. So instead of pigeonholing you into, you have to take this one before you take this one because this one is what enables the gear, this one's what enables the loot, and this one is what makes it bearable, it's instead ways that you want to engage with the content and ways that you want to engage with the upgrades. So for example, for things like, come on, face me! You now make your Delirium encounters 25% more likely to spawn the unique bosses. And when you slay the unique, super unique enemies, it pauses the Delirium timer for 20 seconds. It used to be that this change was only applied to rare monsters, and it only paused the timer for 5 seconds. 5 to 15 seconds at a time. Because the way that Delirium was created, Delirium is basically what you put on your map when you want guaranteed cross-pollination. Every time you kill the rare, as a part of the base mechanic, but this was never explained properly, you had to discover this, is that when you went and you engaged with content that was based around additional sub-content, that content allowed you to pause the timer. So if you're fighting an enemy that came from an essence, when you kill that essence monster will pause the timer. Ergo, more rares, more time on the map. Which, ergo, if you're juicing the map with monsters, and the monsters are really hard, and the monsters are very plentiful, you need to have a build that can clear the map, and can do so without you necessarily putting all the damage you have on the monsters. So you need to have big clear, you need to have big damage, and you need to have big damage to pop the rares, so that you can get the extra timer to then explore the map to go find the mechanic, originally, because it was kill-based. This is technically still kill-based, but it's only kill-based in the sense of you're going deeper into the map, and you're trying to walk through the enemies to get to the next encounter faster. So, affixes like, come on, face me, will give you more timer, because the more you kill the monsters, the more likely you are to summon the unique bosses. And the more you kill the unique bosses, the more time you get to the endgame boss, so you can get that loot off of them. And then, the next one, get out of my head! Get out of my head! That's literally what it's called. I'm doing the shitpost for the humor. It gives you magic monsters have a 25% chance to drop or to add and have an additional Delirium modifier, which makes them more likely to drop the liquid emotions that you're hunting for. most liquid emotion drops usually come from the end game version of the encounter. So going into a map that has the wave-based delirium content is what's more likely to give you access to that extra injection of emotion. But you will get more of them more often if you use this in your normal mapping. So you're not just hoping that it drops off the boss. You're kind of trying to guarantee that while you're farming, you will get the chance to get those effects. And one of the things that are important about those effects, especially things like I Know Your Childhood Fears, is that you get increased liquid emotions dropped by monsters, and then the liquid emotions that you find have a 20% chance to be ancient diluted emotions. And what the ancient diluted emotions do is that they have the ability of re-rolling with a guaranteed time loss jewel, a guaranteed craft mod. So just like how the Kalgurans said, we heard you like essences, so we made rune essences for your essences, you also have a similar system happening here, where Delirium says, yo bro, I heard you like to have time loss jewels, and you like to have crafted modifiers. So here's a crafted modifier that augments your jewel with a guaranteed outcome that your build wants. So more build control in the hand of the player, but it's going to come at the cost of re-rolling and rolling and setting up your item the best way you can get it. There are ways using Hinakora's Lock, which is guaranteed and carried over from Path of Exile 1, because it's a metacrafting item that allows you to see the outcome of a input before you do it. You can find ways of basically making perfectly rolled versions of these gears, which makes it even better because it puts more power in the hand of the player to design their gear. Now, Hinakora's Lock is expensive, so regular players won't have access to them, but if you're a competent player that knows how to use the system, you can pretty much generally know what you should use, because each of these liquid emotions that are ancient based will have a modifier type that are rolled on the different types of modifiers: ruby, sapphire, and emerald, red, blue, and green. Red will do things like, with this liquid paranoia, it will make it roll to 1 to 2% additional attack damage. It'll make blue roll 1 to 2% additional cast speed, and emerald will make it rolled 1 to 2 additional attack speed. On items that go onto builds of characters that are designed the way that I designed my last build, you're putting those jewels into very big nodes where there's lots of other nodes around it that you can interact with. So doing it that way, you're basically juicing your build for every bit of damage and every bit of defense and every bit of utility that you can get out of these effects. And when you have it the way you want it, you're talking about levels and levels and levels of damage that cannot be ignored and cannot be considered weak. But it's always a payoff. Doing this is going to be hard because you have to farm them, so you're going to have to interact with the mechanic a lot. So you have to get stronger as you're doing it, and it's not fair for you to do this and basically re-roll these things that are going to roll like veil rolls on your gear without actually giving yourself a chance to get access to it, to make yourself stronger over time. So, here on this example, this Cataclysm Desire, it shows that when they take this, it is going to erase the chill modifier that was on the Sapphire, and it's going to replace it with the additional attacks, the additional cast speed, while leaving the duration of damaging elements and the increased minion damage intact. Taking it from a 3-mod item to a 3-mod item, basically. Normally you want to add more mods to add more lines. That means you would have a 4-mod jewel. You try to roll that jewel as best as you can and add an additional mod. So taking it from a 3-mod, using an Exalted on it to turn it into a 4-mod, then taking the Ancient Emotion and rolling it on it, which is going to strip one of those random mods off and replace it with the new crafted mod. And that's going to be your final item before you re-add another crafted mod again. Basically. That is the output that you're looking for. It's a very hard metacraft, but if you're smart, you know how to do it. There's another one that is added called You Thought You Were Free. That is going to give you a 25% chance for an additional simulacrum to appear in the Delirium VOD when you are spreading it from what is called Grand Mirrors. Grand Mirrors are the in-game version of the normal mirrors, which are the encounters. All of this and all the other changes, all made to make these more accessible. They do the same thing with the Breach tree, because they have reworked it to the same version as Breach 2.0, and what they're bringing here into this game is basically Breach 2.5. They are bringing over the 2.0 version of Breach, where you are going to have a stabilization effect. Rather than just going through the map and trying to clear it, you're going to have it stabilize, where you'll then have a boss that you fight that will then drop the majority of most of your outcomes. But they are also bringing over the entire length of the full expansion that was brought with Breach, which involves the Genesis tree. The Genesis tree is basically a skill tree for item crafting. It is a giant skill tree for item crafting, is the best way to describe it. There are different womb gifts, which are basically fruit slots, that you slot into the tree, and you feed with what they call graft blood, which is the blood from the monsters that come from the Horde. As it was described in the first game, you kill the Horde to get the blood, which is the juice. All things that are inputs I'm going to call juice. You get the blood, you get the juice from killing the Horde. The Horde will drop the fruit. The fruit goes in the tree. As you continue doing missions involving the Genesis tree, you will get skill points. The skill points go into the wound gifts for these different fruit sections. Rings, necklaces, uniques, currency. There are 5 of them. If you want a certain outcome, you skill it on the tree. Let's say you want to create a really good amulet. You can randomly put the juice in, and then from the hive blood, you will get an outcome at random. If you want it to be super specific, you put in a specific input on the tree. Very simple. It sounds like it's hard, but really this is just the effect of looking at multiple spear grids. They are wacky and weird, I will give you that. Because even when I was experiencing this when we were inside of Mirage, because I hadn't played Breach 2.0 when they originally added it, it was a change that they made to the core campaign. Because they introduce it to you in Act 6. So you get immediate access to understanding how it works, and they give you a version of it in quest form that enables you to learn. But the tree in Exile 1 is not the tree in Exile 2. This one is bigger, it is more complex. But it's not so complex that you can't understand it. They just added 3 more connections. That is it. So, the womb gifts...
It was deceptively complex.
Yes, it's deceptively complex because it looks like a lot, but what you actually do is you make it small. So, belts, rings, amulets, currency. Put the fruit in the tree. When you put the fruit in the tree, you put it in its section that it can be augmented by. If you just care about rolling random choices, put fruit in tree, press button, birth fruit, take item. If you want to go layers beyond that, you start looking at the ways that you can affix the tree and how you can change its outcomes. Some things will make more outcomes more likely. Some things will make outcomes less likely. Some things will create chaotic creations that will change the outcomes entirely. However, and whatever you choose to do, what you're basically doing is you are modifying the final calculation mathematically. So let's say you want a necklace that is strength based and has attack speed modifiers and attack damage modifiers, but does not have casting modifiers and will have at least some of the suffixes be stat lines: dexterity, strength, intelligence. You put it on the tree, and then you pray. it will statistically make it so that if you want one outcome, it's going to take away another outcome. And so on and so on. We don't know what the points on the tree are right now. They teased them on Exile 1. They did not tease them here on Exile 2. But knowing how they function in Exile 1, that is exactly how the tree is going to function. Some have outcomes that make it a certain type of base. Some outcomes have it that it changes the entire design of the item. You can change it from a caster item, to an attack item, to a protections item, and so on. Whatever you want, however it's designed, press the button that does the outcome that you want. Now, because that requires a little bit of knowledge, it means it's going to require a little bit of experimentation. But that's normal. That is expected. As you experiment with them, for example, here, on this side of the tree, Bloodstone Amulet says, a birthed item cannot be a Bloodstone Amulet. This means, when you select that choice, you cannot get a Bloodstone. A Bloodstone Amulet is a base that gives you health. So if I want a stat necklace, I take this to deny Bloodstone being in the pool. Does this make sense?
A little. Sorry, I'm like trying to manage a couple of things while I cook.
Another outcome is for Stellar Amulets, so that a birth item cannot be a Stellar Amulet. A Stellar Amulet is a multi-stat. It does strength and intelligence and dexterity, but it's a smaller tier. Stellar is like 2 to 8 of all stat, so 8 times 3, a maximum of, my brain hurts, 24?
What was the calculation? Sorry.
8 times 3.
Yeah, 24.
The Stellar Amulet, compared to a Jade Necklace, an Intelligence Necklace, or a Strength Necklace, in the other game, it could do up to 30. They cut the number in half in this game. So, this is equivalent to an Onyx Necklace, which would have done 5 to 15 of all stat. 15 times 3 is obviously 35. So, you're getting a little less all stat, but you're increasing the pool by that much. You're bringing the baseline of all of your stats up, versus having a dual split stat between dexterity and intelligence, or intelligence and strength, or strength and dexterity, and so on. If you take this, you deny it from creating Stellar Amulets. So you're more likely to get one of the bases that you actually want to find the item and craft the item into. Sometimes that can be good, because maybe your build doesn't need a Stellar Amulet as a base. Maybe there is a choice that will make it so that you can make it into a Stellar Amulet. Or because you're denying it from being one of the other outcomes, you make it more likely that it becomes that outcome. So if you deny the Strength Necklace outcome, and the Dexterity Necklace outcome, and the Intelligence Necklace outcome, and the Rarity Necklace outcome, you're leaving more outcomes like the base health, base energy shield, and base triple stat being more likely. Which is why I said it's math. Who is going my house phone?
Confirm. Potent door. Scan.
I am picking this shit up. Further on the tree, there's another one that says cannot be gold amulets, which is the Rarity Necklace I just talked about. And then further down the tree, there are ones that make it so it has a more likely 1% chance, scaling up to what Forms Beyond Understanding says is 5% chance to be limit, portent, or absent. I don't know what those words mean right now. More than likely, it's a special rare outcome, because this is really far down the womb gift tree. But, as simple as it is, you apply the Graft Blood, you apply the points, you put the amulet into the womb gift, and then you press the button. And then, you get a version. So, here, we get to see what an absent amulet looks like. It grants a skill, called Eternal Rage. It disallows -1 prefix, -1 suffix. You get to have up to 6 by default. -1 means you get to have 2. So a total of 4 affixes on your necklace. 2 prefixes, 2 suffixes. That's a lot of loss of protective stats from your prefix, and potential stats of damage from your prefix, as well as potential stats of defense from your suffix. This Demon Heart Amset necklace is pretty okay. You've got plus 12 max energy shield and 64 plus maximum life. So this is a dual stat shield, or a dual stat amulet for somebody who wants to have blue life and red life. It also has 34 cold resistance, which is a tier 2 modifier. No, it's not. It's a tier 3 modifier. A tier 3 modifier cold resistance line, along with a 20.5 life regeneration line, which I think is tier 3 or tier 2. The thing that is the premier here is obviously the skill effect. So hopefully it explains what Eternal Rage was. Because at this point of the broadcast, I was taking notes on everything and it was starting to get very confusing. Another version that it can gift is something called a Corona Amulet, where it has a socket inside of it, and it says that this item can gain a boostedness from socketed items as though it was a helmet. Which means anything you put in the socket will be read as though it is a socket of a helmet slot. This means that if you have something like, I want to put a particular rune in my head that will give me, for them, they chose the example of Soul Core of Zasal, which will give you 3% increased maximum mana, you can add that. For something like Mana Forged Arrows, that's an entire archetype of damage by itself. More base mana pool, more mana used for spells, more physical damage added to arrows. Juice your arrows, get mana leech, basically everything in front of you gets turned into lightning fodder. Very powerful if you're trying to make a build like that. Then they show examples. Then they show examples of different ways that you can have different outcomes be added to the item. Full of Vigor makes it that your burst item always has a life or mana modifier. Scarred Flesh makes it so that your burst item always has a resistance modifier. Innate Carapace makes it so that your burst item always has an armor, evasion, or energy shield modifier. It basically means you're guaranteeing this happens, and more than likely down the line behind those items, it's guaranteeing that another outcome doesn't happen. In terms of viability, that is an extremely powerful 3-slot, because it's very hard to get necklaces that have offense and defense, because the rolls are just hard. The game can be very unfun sometimes. We're not Diablo, so we don't have Loot Plus. We don't get a chance for every 15 items we pick up when it's just perfectly better for us, and it just works magically. Sometimes you have to do some work.
I mean, wasn't Path of Exile meant to be an MMO in the first place?
In the sense of being a Diablo 2 clone. What I mean by Loot Plus is that when Diablo 3 went from vanilla to Reaper of Souls, they added Loot Plus, where the item on the ground automatically drops as your item class. So every item that you drop as a sorceress is always an intelligence item that is always going to randomly roll intelligence plus some other stat on the equipment. So even if you roll junk tier, it's always going to be for your class. It's never something like, hey, I'm using a bow. Why do you keep showing me quarterstaves? Hey, I'm a quarterstave. Why do you keep showing me armor items? Hey, I'm an armor class. Why the fuck do I have all these robes? We don't get that design. This is what we call. Gotcha. This is what we call the difference between ground loot and window loot. This is technically being made in a window that is designed around a skill tree. So anything coming out of the Genesis tree is what we call plus level loot that is being created from windows. So this is window loot. Window loot, usually you get to pick at your leisure. This is different from the window of ritual, which is real window loot. This is more like, it's kind of like it's simulating a ground drop, but you're putting this together like a laboratory experiment.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So when I say metacrafting, you're basically opening up out of game, you're opening up a tree and you're like, let me assess the tables. What's the outcome that potentially can go on this item? This is that, but in a skill tree. And you're picking the tables and you're like, I want that, I want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, I want that, and I want to have a chance of this. And then you take your money and you're just like, gamble, 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 gamble. So every fruit that you put in the tree and then you birth is a gamble slot. So you're basically setting up the experiment window, and then you're pulling a lever. Does that make sense now?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So this is the effect that Path of Exile has that Diablo doesn't. They don't have lever pulls. We have leather pulls. But our leather pulls they've never been a guaranteed powers curve. It's always been a random chance to get fucked in the ass. And we get fucked in the ass more than we get rewarded. But when we're smart, we get rewarded a lot. Because sometimes, if we're looking for something for ourselves, that's why we get butt fucked. I have to potentially find gear out of all this trash. And I have to turn trash into treasure. If you're playing a trade league, if it's not for you, you could sell it to somebody else. But more than likely, I'm probably going to end up playing Solo Self-Found again. So I'm thinking in perspective of just myself and what I can do.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's also modifiers on here that say always mana modifier, always lightning resistance modifier, always armor modifier. This is actually really crazy because this means that not only can you guarantee a certain outcome, you're also guaranteeing the type of outcome you want. So this is even better than than Exile 1, because Exile just said you get the resistance. It didn't say that you get to pick the resistance. So now you can itemize it for what you need for your build. So if you're missing lightning resistance on a necklace, you can roll a lightning resistance necklace, and maybe you want to gamble with the prefixes, and this is a way to do that. Extremely powerful.
Gotcha.
Extremely powerful. I also have a line that does maximum values too. But
Okay.
But anyways, moving forward. Here on this screen, you have an allotment of basically some of the outcomes that you can make. You have outcomes that give you additional plus all res. You've got outcomes that give you additional bases for maximum life. You've got a better outcome for max damage for physical. You've got a better outcome for max damage for chaos. You've got a better outcome that shows the examples of the items that are going to be socketing things as though they are different types of tiers. That grasping ring is an example of socketing something as if it's a pair of gloves. And the mnemonic ring is an example of an extension of increased maximum mana. And some of the rolls that you can expect to be able to roll on some of the equipment. Some of these gear pieces are not amazing. Usually you'd want to have a mixture of everything. You'd want to have some life, you'd want to have some plus defenses, you'd maybe want to have some additional damage, you'd want to have some rarity, maybe some coverage of at least 75% coverage of elements, a combination of fire and lightning and chaos, and some type of fire, lightning, ice, and chaos. But these are like okay staple pieces. The best one that I'm looking at here is the Loath Circle Vitalic Ring. You have additional damage on fire and cold to attacks, plus intelligence and cold resistance. It's the best because it's the most likely you could fit onto any build. Most builds are going to start by being life before they transition into being blue life or some type of alternate stat. So it's just the best by adding damage, but obviously on an attack build, not a casting build. Moving forward from this, and all the different types of builds that you can make with all the different types of ones between the rings and the gloves and the necklace and the boots. You also have the ones that are showing you different levels of new upgrades. So for example, the Amethyst Loath Twirl demonstrates that you can get an effect on your rings that show that your offering skills have increased buff effects. This is really powerful for a minion build. On the other side, on the Rune Whorl. I hate that word. It's so hard to pronounce. Whorl. Rune Whorl Sapphire Ring. It shows that the minions have a surpassing chance to fire additional projectiles by 94%. Which basically means any minion that has the ability to use a projectile, if you get another 6 points of surpassing, you have guaranteed +1 projectile on your minions. Because that's how that works now. Instead of guaranteeing that you get additional projectiles, they make it a surpassing chance. So you basically roll this table, and the table says as many times as you have 100% is how many times you roll a chance to surpass the ability to fire more than your maximum capacity. So if you have 294 surpassing chance to fire an additional arrow, you are guaranteed to shoot 2 more arrows, and then you have the remaining percentage chance to fire a 3rd additional arrow. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. In a similar case to Risk of Rain, it's basically chain procking.
Yes. They wrote it this way because they made it really hard for us to be able to access forms of additional damage through modifiers of having extra attack speed, opportunity chances, extra damage procs, and also extra casting projectiles, because obviously that's the fastest way to break the game. And some builds were just too strong. People abused them too much. They were too strong. So they nerfed them. And they nerfed them in a way where if you can get the rolls to get surpassing chance on the tree and on your weapon, then it's basically the same. But it's that little extra investment where it's like, you don't get to automatically win the game because you picked the fucking ranger class. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Alongside that, they also brought a change to the catalysts. They're not really that much of a change. It's just the fact that they're making it so that the catalysts they add here are putting additional enhancements on jewels. They're special types. They replace themselves. It's not that big of a deal. Not really that big of a change. It doesn't atomize that much out of the game. It's just adding that little more of a change at the end of the day. Because now you can stack all of the fragments that come from Breach, as they've always been designed. But
I'm alive.
welcome back.
Hello.
You can now be able to stack all of the fragments from the from the breach splinters into what is called a revelatory womb gift. And through the Genesis tree, this basically creates the new breach stone, or rather the old method of accessing the breach stone. The way that it used to be done is that you had to basically stack 300 of these fragments in order to create a boss token. This was retarded because do you know how long it takes to take and craft and gather 300 fragments of something?
Quite a bit of time and a waste of it.
Yes.
When it could be simplified and streamlined. Yep, sounds about right.
The original system, when they first implemented 0.1 to early access, was that the tier of your gain is scaled by your map difficulty. Map difficulty 1 through 5 is basically non-existent. 6 through 10 is you get to go see the boss every 2 hours of farming. And then scaling up from 11 to 15, and then through hyperjuicing tactics, which required you to do the content actively. On a base level from 11 to 15, with no skills in the breach tree, it was maybe... It depends on your build's clear time, but on average, you were still doing it once every 2 hours, but you were getting twice as many back, because more than likely, if you were on the trade tree, the amount of money that you would go into putting in to get the fragments by buying them would be equivalent to the amount of currency you're trading for the drops. So the catalysts were worth a lot of money. Let's say they were equivalent to $10. A breach stone is $100. Depending on the catalyst, yes, the catalyst that you're looking for, if it's a good catalyst, is $20. A full stack is $300. A full stack of 10 basically bought you 3 door tries. So, what you would do is you would farm the catalysts from just killing the monsters, which didn't require you to go to the boss. So you then stack 10 of those. Each of those 10 is 3. So now you have 30 boss entries. You sell them on the marketplace to then liquidate into the boss encounters, and then you go into the boss encounter, and you do it as many times as you bought it for. And in the instance of the boss encounter, to go fight Yashult, you then get a chance to then drop even more of those catalysts. You follow?
Yes. Yes, I am.
So, if a womb gift was equal to $100, and you're looking for a special catalyst that is really hard to get, one of the ones that were really hard to get was Ulnatol for physical. A full stack of Unatol is equal to $300. So, if one stack of Unatol is equal to 300, and it takes me one stack of that to buy 3 tries for 100, if I do the runs enough by liquidating all of them, because they all have different going rates, but they're all equalized around about to 10. That means that the more of those I do, because you first get a big cash payout, because that's how original Breach worked. You get a big cash payout, and then you get the chance to fight the boss. If the boss equipment is like $1,000, let's just say average them out and say they're 1,000 per. Every single item drop is 10 tries. And then, if I get extra stacks of all the catalysts that are dropping, and I'm able to stack up like 40 of them, that's 4,000. That's over 40 tries. So then you get into the cycle of I pay for the access, and then I farm sustained access. So you need startup cash in order to do it originally. And it sucked because clear speed is what affected this. Clear speed and getting access to it, because you had the people who were buying the access that were the bossers, and then you had the people who were farming the actual access material, which were the blasters, the mappers. The investment of being a blaster was not as high as being a bosser. So the people who were doing the fuel were charging a go rate from the people bossing in order to stabilize the breach economy. Because basically, the people that are farming the access material, the fragments, are paying for the catalysts. And they're using their own liquidated funds to afford to buy the items from the bossers, who are then buying the access from the blasters. If the market ever dipped, then the entire system was fucked. And this was the case. Now,
and it happens.
Now, Breach was the most accessible version of this content, so it wasn't really that hard to do, and it wasn't really that hard to access. But this was like at the same time originally before they accessed and added Abyss, which gave you at least an off ramp, because you could do both of them at the same time. You can have Abyss, appear in your map while doing Blight, and it cross contaminates really well. If before in 0.1 and then to 0.2, and then eventually when they brought it to 0.3, if you couldn't do Ritual, and Ritual's shittier compared to now, oh my god, wait until we get to the Ritual section. If you couldn't do Ritual and couldn't farm Omens, if you couldn't do Essences and get Essences to juice maps for metacrafting, if you couldn't do Expedition to recombinate weapons, you did Reach. And without Abyss, the entire economy stalled, because the best items were in Reach. But it was also flooded. Yeah, it was also flooded. And people wanted to make better rare equipment than unique equipment. And to do that, they had to get the catalysts to craft them, to then do the calculations and then the fucking experiments to make the best thing possible, which then destroyed their ability to actually float the economy. Because the other thing that came from that was Breach Rings. Breach Rings had the chance to go over 20% quality, all the way to 40. So, if I'm a crafter who's looking for Ulnatol Catalyst to design a strength ring that is also an extremely strong physical damage ring for a bleed build, one that's going to be better than Hemiopuncture, I'd have to get 40 of those catalysts. If those catalysts are basically going for $300, and I'm the one who's creating the material to farm them, I have to pay that many times 40 in order to get what I need to do a potential chance on the craft. Now, the smart thing to do is to wait until you actually do the final craft yourself, so you don't get fucked over doing that. But the way that people were playing is that they were like forcing the change themselves directly, and they weren't doing it the smart way. They were doing it the dumb way. They would put it on the item, then try to craft the item, instead of trying to perfect the craft, then completing the item with the finished version. So physical became one of those premiums, and then it became to the elementals, and then it came to the defenses. Then eventually they did a defense change, and the entire economy flipped on its head again. Because now it was no longer about damage, it was about investing in the best version of the global defenses. Because global defense sells better than damage items do. Yada yada yada.
Gotcha.
farming became impossible, economy flipped on its head again when new shit was added, yada yada yada. And at the same time, what happened was that they changed it again, where instead of stacking these to 300, you were stacking them to a certain amount of numbers because you put the item in the realm gate, and then it opens the version that you're farming to. So 50 opened the tier 1 version, I think 100 opened the tier 2 version, and 150 opened the tier 3 version. So they created a better sync so that you could readjust and reevaluate the actual cost. But what ended up happening is that the tier 4 version was basically all or nothing. If it's not tier 4, I don't want it. And they said this is too hard, so they took away all the tier 4 difficulties and only kept it at the main tier 3 difficulties. So they brought the tier of difficulty down because the players couldn't do it, similar to how they were having problems with Delirium. And then they increased the drop rate, but they then added extra items that were new, that were best in slot for certain for certain incomes. One of the ones in question I mentioned, which is Homeopuncture, it's almost all Unatol. It's almost all physical modifiers. So bleed modifier, bleed magnitude modifier, the bleed magnitude modifier that also does self-harm, but if you get the ability to nullify the difficulty of it because it's based on chill, if you increase your resistance against chill or you become completely immune to chill, it's completely upside, no downside. And that increased tier meant that more of them dropped, so it returned to being the same problem again. So to simplify, they tried to fix the problem that was the economy's balance for how it was ran, and they tried to fix it, and then they broke it again because players got really greedy and they didn't respect the balance. It's like it's like that movie The Substance. They refused to respect the balance and kept taking more and more and more from the system, and the system eventually broke it on itself. And so their change for this is that they used Breach 2.0 as a patch, a literal patch. Technically, it's more like a sealant, as a literal patch to solve this problem. Now, there is no trading the fragments to potentially open up the thing. To get the item, you put it in your fucking tree. You can still sell the fragments, obviously, but it's it's easier for you to now either sell the womb gift directly or to buy the items rather than buying access to them. Because everybody can farm. That ain't shit now. So you stop the gatekeeping of the equipment and you increase the access to the outcome while also granting new things that can do other shit for the players and putting more power in their hands for both crafting and for expectation of outcomes from their experimentation. So, pro player, negative the equivalent of market scalpers. All good things for people who want to actually play the game, very bad things for people who are just like, you either pay me for this item or you don't get it. You get to tell them, fuck you, I'll go farm it myself. And that actually is accessible to you now, because it's no longer based on the tier. Because you have to do the tier first in order to have access to the harder tier.
Sounds about right. That's actually a good thing. Fuck people that do that sort of scummy shit in games.
Yes. It's very annoying. Now, in the system, when you activate the Breach Stone and you put it in, it's going to reveal parts of the map very similar to how Kalgurin does this as well. For Delirium, what Delirium does is it makes you pick a part of the map, and it makes the area of the map basically pollute with its content. With this, what it does is it guarantees spawns the access to the zone by revealing it to you. And all of those connected pieces that all light up in that zone all have guaranteed encounters. So it's very similar to the same thing that they did with Abyss and that they did with Delirium. Running the content guarantees the content. It's not a chance to get it, you will get it. Whether or not you get the one you're looking for, that's still the luck of the draw. But you will get it. It's no longer, I've got to divine the stars and add up several different tiers of the equipment loot, and I have to pray, and then I have to run this so that I can finally have a chance to actually have decent rates. No. Run the content, find the content. Run the content, find the content. You still have access to the original versions. You get access to the version of Aelith that was in Exile 1, which now makes it into a wave-based type of defense mission. You have to protect her from the monsters. This was already put into Exile 1. Now they just ported it to Exile 2. When you do that and you destroy that hive, you not only get the payout of the loot, but you also get access to things that give you access to the hive fortress that you then have to raid in order to then destroy the hive walls around them and do the same wave-based content again. In the maps...
A giant spider.
Yes.
Sorry.
A giant spider nest. No, that is exactly what it is. It's a giant spider's nest. It's an interdimensional spider's nest.
Okay, I was... Rogue will know this. I was making a reference to EDF. A giant enemy spider. Because they have
Defense Force 4.1.
You'll be surprised to know.
Everything's good.
You'll be surprised to know that when they designed these maps, a lot of them designed them based around the games that they were playing, and they did indeed design a lot of this around enemy defense force.
Hey, let's go.
So in maps, you can expect this mechanic to do up to things like 7 or 10 waves. Inside of the Hive Fortress, you have to protect her for somewhere between 20 to 30. I think this one here is like halfway to the maximum. I think the maximum might be 30, if it's still based on the same scaling tree. I don't know that if it is, but 24 is not that hard, because while you're defending her, you get access to special powers that let you protect her. It's basically a combination of the blight mechanics, but rather than setting up towers, you are the main line of defense, and Aelith grants you special abilities while you're doing it. So, around your aura of your character, in your presence, is a flame effect. When you walk into barricades created by the Hiveborn, the breach monsters, you evaporate their defenses. And as you make your way to the center of the nest towards Aelith, you can design the path that the monsters will walk to fight her and you. And then based on that positioning, as you defend that slot, you can then mouse over it and use the buttons that enable you to have abilities. So for example, you can have the ability to rain fire on the enemies. You can have the ability to construct walls of fire that will obstruct the Hiveborn's pathing. You can even have the ability to grant her a shield or to grant her healing so that she can stay in the encounter. Because if she loses all of her health, the encounter ends and you don't get loot. Or rather, you get pieces of loot equal to the wave that you completed. I don't think it's an all or nothing mechanic. That would be Ultimatum. But if it works the way that Ultimatum does, you have to do the encounter and complete it, otherwise you don't get the encounter's loot. If it works the way that most encounters do, up to the wave that you completed, you get pieces of it, but you don't get all of it. In most cases, you can basically think of it as still being all or nothing, because you're trying to complete it on purpose, otherwise you wouldn't have started it. But if you find it difficult to do it on your own without interacting with the buttons, you can use the buttons. Using the buttons doesn't take away from your ability to get the full loot. There are some mechanics in some games where if you use the special abilities past a certain point of guaranteed uses, every time you use it, it takes away from your potential loot tier. It doesn't do that here.
Fair enough. Funnily enough, as you mentioned, like you get to create like essentially the waves tower defense like route.
Yes.
That's kind of like a weirdly in a way the game called Sanctum. Have you ever heard of that before?
I think I've heard of it, but I've never gotten to play it myself.
Okay, so it's a first-person shooter tower defense game where there are guaranteed maps and routes, but you get to create like the actual route itself by blocking off certain pathways, doing like the long corridor. There's a bunch of turrets on the side. They just start doing damage, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That's what that kind of reminds me of. Mm-hmm. It's a really fun game. It was on there was a couple of weeks ago. There was a sale for 4-player pack for like $10. I should have gotten it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
I think it's made by Team 17. I could be wrong, or Coffee Stains, one of the two.
Okay. So when you do these different hives and you access these hives for their gifts, you will eventually get the ability to access a breach stronghold, which is the other formulation of breach content. Basically, there's different types of breach 2.0 material. Originally, breach 0.1 was giant circle, walk in circle, kill monsters, clear the circle, make it get as big as it possibly can, try to kill everything in the circle before it closes, circle closes, get loot. It was very low maintenance, but it was also very one-dimensional. And it was also based on clear speed. If you couldn't clear faster, your build speed was punished for your inability to kill everything in 0.5 seconds. For most builds, clearing is a part of the game, but some builds want to fight bosses more than they want to kill enemies. That is completely normal. It's just that it's unfortunate that it punishes those people that end up not having the god build that can do everything. So, they designed it in the form that you still have stabilized breaches, which is what the version of that breach was, but then you have the wave-based content, and then you have the defense-based content. So you have the stabilized breaches, you have the hive fortresses, and you have the hive nest closures. So breach hives, breach strongholds that are the reinforcement of those hives when they become very stable, and then stabilized breaches. 3 forms of content. It is lacking of direction for people that are not familiar with them. So what they did here is that they're walking you through all 3 versions, and that 3rd version, the Breach Stronghold, is the one that takes you to the penultimate encounter in the zone. So while you do this, you still do wave-based content while you're in the Stronghold trying to take on the monsters. But then what happens is that you get access to evolved versions of the new versions of the bosses. So before, they called them the names of their domain, but now they call them it that was, because they will become a fused being that is supposed to be called Yeshult Yula, which is the name of each of the generals that come from these different paths. Tol, Esh, Sheula, Yuda, Yula Ashat, Zest Ula, and Ulnatol. They combine into Zest, but Zest is missing Sheula because Sheula is the dreamer who's working against them. This is lore-based shit. This was in the entire purpose of reinventing the lore, because they were setting this up back in Path of Exile 1 to bring into the future of Path of Exile 2. Sneaky, sneaky. But...
So it's a payoff.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes, it is a payoff. Yes. So, it that was the generals, collectively, are supposed to become this greater being that will then lead the Breach Lords. But the Breach Lords were betrayed by Sheula, who created the form of these monks that train with them. Because that is what the second ascendancy class of the monk is. He's a monk of that order that learns how to tap into chaos power through Sheula's teachings. And Sheula basically is helping the denizens of Rayclast resist control against the Breach Lords. So, when the giant hand comes out of the door to crush Zesht, what happens is that either Sheula himself or some other demonic creature from the Outer Planar is killing them for failing to dominate the realms. And then you do the content again, basically. That wasn't very clear when the game first came out, because it's like, who the fuck is this guy? Big guy, wings, leathery, made of hands, don't understand what's happening, is using the effect of all the different Breach Lords, except for Sheula, because Sheula was a fightable lord himself, and then he just basically disappeared, and nobody knows where he went. So inside the fortress, when you do these waves, and you fight them, you will get the chance to fight these people. And then eventually, at some point, you will get to confront the person behind all of them. The Breach Tree has about 30 points. Some of the points that they have access to is things like reactive hide seeding, which is that when you complete a breach, you get a 10% chance to add a hive to a nearby map. So when you're doing the circular breaches, you get a chance to do a hive while you're doing it. Another one is Provoke the Swarm, where Alith gains ability options that summon additional breach monsters, and then you get 25 increased number of skills that get created by Alith when you're within a breach hive. So, you get a button that lets you summon more monsters, which equals more gear, more loot, more potential, at the same time as spawning more of the options to help you with the pseudo tower defense mode that the hive presents you. And then
Okay.
here it shows you what it looks like when it gets activated. It's a little button that says spawns magic monsters, and you're basically spawning extra encounters in the middle of the encounter. Now that basically means that you're trying to challenge yourself to have a chance to potentially have access to that material, because you're just making the difficulty harder. So if you end up failing because of it, it's gonna suck. But it is what it is. Then they have another one here called Study the Chains, where the run Marshal of Jest has a 25% chance to drop in lineage support. Lineage supports are another way of saying bloodline / legendary extended supports. It's a rework of a system that came from Battle of Exile 1. You used to have jewels that had special effects that when they were equipped to your character, they would modify or outright change entirely the way that skill functions on your character. These basically do the same job, but instead of being you wear this in order to do the thing, it is instead augmenting your ability with a special different effect, which is basically the same thing, but if you word it differently, people look at it differently, and that's what they did. So, one of the versions that you can get from Vrun is called Vrun's Aftermath. It is a lineage warcry that allows you to destroy ice crystals and ice fragments. Supported skills will empower attacks if they destroy enough ice crystals and ice fragments. So this is an ice-based effect. Warcries cause ice crystals to explode. Supported warcries detonate ice fragments. Supported warcries empower 3 additional attacks if they destroy a total of 5 ice crystals and ice fragments. So, if you want to use empowering skills, and you're creating ice crystals while you're attacking things, which, remember what it was mentioning with all of the Kalgurin skills? If you use a Kalgurin skill that creates ice crystals, similar to the effect that the mage was using to explore them as basically a frost flower, this says, if I explode my ice fragments, I get enhanced effects. And all war cries are enhancement effects. So, slams, for example. Ancestral Cry, Enduring Cry, Corrupted Cry, the Fire War Cry, whose name is escaping my brain. You get more uses of those attacks. So let's say you have a build that's designed around destroying, exploding, and slamming. That means Forge Hammer, that means Rampage, Stampede, anything that's going to trigger earthquake effects and fissures. You hit the fissure, you create the frost, and you create the fire flower. You then explode it with your Warcry, the same way that Warcry users can use Shield Wall and detonate the Shield Wall. You blow them up for max damage, and then you get more enhancements to your attacks, so you can keep attacking with your empowerment. So one of the examples is that one of those empowerments that you use has the ability to grant 50% of your damage as fire. So if you're adding 1,000,000 damage on an attack, and you empower that attack to do a potential of up to 12 additional attacks because you triggered that effect. And then you have an effect that allows you to potentially increase the amount of uses you have with that DPS. You are potentially adding on upwards of 20 extra special effect attacks because you were able to activate that effect. So you're creating bonus damage in the first place. You're creating utility in the second place. And then you're creating synergistic, comparable supports to your skills in the third base. All of them synergistically working together to make your build more complete. Because the problem with Warcries is that they're cooldown based. And you can't activate the Warcry again until you get through the cooldown. But if you have more enhanced attacks when you attack, what you're doing is you're actually increasing the effective time, or actually decreasing the effective time you're waiting between your attacks. So if the normal tier is 12, and it's based on enemy power, so I have to be standing on top of them, and I activate that effect and I pop them, and I get the chance to get additional attacks on top of it, I am giving myself more time for it to cool down, because I don't have to wait that long to get more chances to use it. Does that make sense? I'm creating more damage, and I'm reducing the time that I'm waiting to get the use of that damage, so that I'm not waiting as long between the cooldowns. Mouthful, but that's how that works. It's a really fun system, because usually slams by nature are warrior-based and they're fire-based. But if you're able to turn them into ice, which you can do with the lineage supports that are being added, and with the Kalguran supports that are being added, and with a little bit of stat swapping and some inventive thinking around how to use Herald of Ice and AoE pops using things like Trample Toe, you can basically turn a skill that's designed to like clear a pack into a skill that's able to clear the map and the boss around it. Now, the version that they're doing in this clip here is a bleed version. So this is a combination of what looks like fire, corrupted blood, and bleed. But that's a lot of power, because ice crystals are based on maximum health. So you're hitting the person with maximum health damage. It's pretty crazy. And then, of course,
That is.
and then in the Atlas tree on the Atlas passive, you've got things that increase your chance to find selected womb gifts, and it actually gives you a choice between all the ones you have. It looks like it's a total of 4, so you get a 100% increased chance to find the lavish wound gifts that will create the belts, the necks, the currency objects, and the rings. 100% is nothing to scoff at. You also have a upgrade here that says if you kill Varund, you'll be able to return his head to the Genesis tree to unlock a crafting option called the Grasping Orchid. And what it appears the Grasping Orchid does is it allows you to put...
PC.
Okay. It allows you to put rings into the orchid to trade it for something. More than likely, it's a way of transforming them into the special object called Grasping Mail. Because the Grasping Mail was a type of outcome that when you traded to a vendor 60 rings that were breach rings, it turned it into a chess piece that would have the ability to roll a random modifier from the breach line. So something that would affect one of the breach lords. Something based on fire, something based on frost, something based on lightning, something based on bleed, and something based on chaos. If Shayula options aren't available, then it's just those 4. Elemental plus physical. But technically physical can also double as chaos, so we won't know until we get our hands on it, but that's how that works. And then they did a change to Ritual, where Ritual is no longer just facing the King of the Mist. There is a new pinnacle boss that's behind him. But the thing that's actually really exciting about Ritual, and I'm skipping to it so I can show it on the screen. The thing that is now important about Ritual and its offerings. So earlier I was talking about the difference between ground loot and window loot. This is a version of what we call true window loot. This is a window that opens when you interact with the content, and this basically opens a window you can then trade from it like a vendor. This window loot from Ritual has removed all outcomes that are not uniques and omens. The reason why that's crazy is that originally what you would do with Ritual is a way to get to your omens, and it's one of the main ways and the only way to access the Breach Lord, or excuse me, not Breach Lord, to access the King of the Mist, which was the first version of the endgame encounter. But what they've done here is that they've actually made it so that you can actually get access to the content before you deal with the King of the Mist. And they also simplified the way that you access his tribute. Before, and this is the really shitty thing about Ritual, it was all random chance. The system is a deferral system. Things appear in the window when you complete the content. You then have a chance to pick at what you want based on the amount of currency that was created, an invisible itemized currency called tribute, that is created when you kill the monsters inside of the ritual ground. The monsters you kill in the circle basically get ritualized into the juice. More juice means more tribute, but some things in the tribute are expensive. So, you have to pick. Do you take what's there right now, or do you defer it for the future? Deferring an option makes it pay for part of its cost. So think of it like layaway. Fucking Walmart doesn't do layaway anymore, but if you've ever heard of layaway at places like Toys R Us and Walmart, this is what it is. It's layaway.
Yeah.
You pay a part of the deferral cost. The deferral cost reduces the full cost of the item. It's a keep-up system. If you end up missing a payment, it's going to try to charge you to upkeep it. If you do not pay it on the upkeep, it will go into deferral. Or, excuse me, a better word to use than deferral, because it is deferral. It will go into a state of repossession. When it is in potential of being repossessed from your inventory, it gets a red box around it. So, if you don't pay the deferral, that will be the last time, bless you, that'll be the last time you see the object. So, in here, I can see there is a changing talisman, one of the palms of the dreamer, a beacon of Aziz, an omen of greater exaltation. I forget what that chest is called. I forget what those boots are called. And I've never seen that amulet before, which means it's a new amulet. But what you would originally have, bless you again.
Sorry.
What you would usually have in this window is you'd see a bunch of trash vendor items. Trash vendor items, waystones, currency, omens, potentially, the audience of the king, etc., etc. And you would have to wait for the audience of the king to appear so you can defer it and then slowly start paying it down. You also had the ability of getting splinters for the tomens so that you could then start putting together additional content that was based for the fragment version of Ritual, which was very painstakingly and hard to do because you had to farm. Oh my god, did you have to farm? Because since it's random chance, you're not guaranteed to see the thing that you want. Eventually, it could enter in the pool, but it's a random chance. So more likely what you did was that you picked the things that you wanted from the list, and you deferred them, and eventually you would pick up the things that were actually viable to you. So, inside of here, one of the things that no longer can be done, assuming it works the way that it says that it does now, where it's only uniques and it's only omens, is sometimes you would see skill engraving gems. Because in this game, unlike the other game, you don't get the gems directly, you cut them. And you have to cut them for your level based on your stat requirements. If you're looking for a special kind of support gem between level 1 to level 5, or level 1 to level 20, if you saw a level 19 gem inside your favors, defer it, pay it off 5 maps later, after doing 3 to 4 rituals per map, and then eventually buy it. Woohoo! I got a level 19 gem, or I've gotten 5 copies of level 5 support gems. Build up my character's power scale and power strength over time, and try to get stronger. Maybe you didn't have the space in your skill gems to actually upgrade them that way. Same thing. Ooh, look, there's a greater skill orb in there. I can use it to add a 4th slot to my gem. Ooh, there's a perfect skill orb in there. I can add a 5th engraving slot to my gem. Power scaling, slowly power scaling over time, but it was a form of guaranteed power scaling. The upside about that system was this was a great way to look for bases for recombination. Because what recombination now does is that it used to take an item and it turned it into an item, depending on what your items that you gave it were. It used to be blue item equals blue item. Yellow item, blue item, potentially 50% yellow, 50% blue. The reason why that matters is because it affects whether or not you can use essences on it. So if I find a very powerful top tier flat roll of a physical spear, and I find a very powerful hybrid roll between percentage damage and flat damage, I take the spear and I slap them together, and after I pineapple apple pen the entire experience using Kalgurin shit, eventually you'll get to a point where, oh no, I ran out of fusion material. What do I do? Because you don't want to farm this on the map. It's very hard to find them. But your one solution, outside of Gwenin, which is the only thing she was fucking good for, you go to favors on the ritual, and you basically keep looking for, I want a spear. Spear, that's not a spear. Spear. Ooh, an audience of the king. Defer. Ooh, a beacon of Aziz. Defer. Ooh, a headhunter. Defer.
Sorry, my phone.
And what would basically happen is, you're not looking for the audience of the king. It just appeared. I wasn't looking for the audience of the king. I was looking for omens. But it's in my attributes now. And then, as you think about this, that is the problem. I've deferred so many things. I gotta keep this. But if I defer this, then I lose that. And I have to farm this to get that. And it's not cheap enough yet. And now I gotta run more of them. So now this map, I have to defer this one and this one and this one. This one's paid up, so this one will hold, and then I gotta transfer it to the other map, and then the next map I'll buy this one, but then that one will be in repossession. So then I gotta do that one to keep it from leaving the inventory. And you see how complicated this gets?
It just sounds complicated and tedious at the same time.
It's taxes and debt.
Oh my god.
That's basically what the system became. The tribute system is supposed to be as simple as, do you want this now, do you not want this, or do you want this later? If the answer is, I don't want this now, you don't take it. If it's, I want this later, you defer it. If it's, I want this now, you just take it now. Sometimes, you don't have enough tribute to take it now, so your only choice is, do I not want this, or do I take it later? If it's a very important piece of equipment that you needed, or maybe you're trying to push your scale of waystone, and you find a waystone that's above the one that you have, so you can guarantee sustaining it if you take it to a powerful map boss, because it will guarantee drop one of the same level, if not one level above. So you're trying to push from level 10 to level 12. You find a level 11 waystone, and you take the level 11 waystone, and while you're in there, you found an audience of the king, and you found ritual splinters, so that you could then properly build up your audience of the king yourself, rather than buying it through the ritual splinters. That system becomes very outdated and outmoded, because now you're keeping up with your debts. You can't see what's in your deferral pool. That's the main problem. You know it's in there if you remember, but you see, we have these things called lives, right? I can't remember that all the time. I'd have to take a picture of it. And certainly, as a exile player who does write down his income profit margins, just for the purposes of, like, if I wanted to make a video of what I did, here's how I did it, and here's how I discovered it to create a tactic, which then can become a market strategy. A regular player, a regular normal player, isn't going to do that. They're not going to remember what's in their item pool, because when we were dealing with this, when we added the original Kalgurins, when you traded people like Toonjin handled item trades. What's on the screen is what's saved in memory. If you don't want what's in the window, you reset the window. Very simple. He took one outcome. Rog did items. Gwenin did item bases as pure Kadala/Geed gambling. And Danig traded the pieces between them. What ended up happening in the version is that they all became Rog, but they all handled different pieces. I don't know how the fuck they're going to do that now, but I assume that it's going to be the same. Toonjin handles belts and rings. Gwenin handles weapons, both one-handed and two-handed. Rog handles equipment and armor. And Danig trades the currency that each of them use between it for his special currency. In that system, it is hard to manage that because if you're looking for fusion material, for example, you're resetting the favors more than you're deferring, because it takes about 2,000 at base to re-roll the deferral system. So I'm assuming they've made it cheaper, but what you end up dealing with at the end of the day, when you actually start engaging with the system enough that you're competent, is that you're dealing with debt and taxes. You have to be debted to get the item. You have to be debted to defer the item. And what eventually will happen is that you'll have so many items in deferral, because you'll have so many little bitty things that add up over time, that it will restrict your ability to actually consume direct content. And so you end up taking a very hard negative at the higher end of your engagement loop. You end up deferring less than what you would have done, because you have to hold the screen in context. But what happens is that if you don't defer when you have an option to open the window, it automatically will punish you, because it will take it as though it was a valid interaction. So even if you don't open the window and you have something in deferment, it needs to be deferred in the map you opened the ritual. If you don't, the game will take it as you passing on it. So you can't just be like, I have a 2,000 investment favor for a mage blood or for a headhunter. This will never happen, but this is hypothetical. I have a 200,000 favor deferral for a mage blood and a headhunter. I can run this multiple times, and then it'll be saved in there. No, it won't. You have to open the window. You must defer it every time. You get one redo. If you do it on one map, and then you miss one map, that extra map is the next chance to defer it. If you miss it, you do not get a third chance. It disappears, and you will now enter into rotation again, where the next time the game decides to roll the chance to spawn it in your window, you have to defer it there again. So it's like restarting all over again.
That just sounds like a waste.
Yes, it is. And the problem a lot of the time is that because of the original system that the game had before they decided to scale it for medium core, it used to be one portal, one door. So player overjuices their map. They are on their third ritual. The window will pause when you open it. This is something that they did for Exile 2 that they backported to Exile 1. So the game pauses now whenever you're in anything that is a window. The game doesn't continue action behind it. The person's on 3 out of 4, and they're on a map that is a tower. They are going towards the 4th encounter, which is where the endgame boss is on that map. They see that there is a mage blood inside there. They're about to defer it, but they can't. They just need a little bit more. They failed the
Gotcha.
boss.
I'm gonna take off. A friend of mine wants to talk,
Okay.
so I'll see you guys later.
Okay, no problem. But
Fair enough.
you're trying to defer the thing. You don't have enough juice. You need just a little bit more. You try to do the 4th encounter. You fail the encounter, and the portal closes. The item is gone forever. That is a bad system. A really bad system. So what they did instead is that now it's just uniques and it's just omens. Because the thing that people wanted to engage with ritual was the omens. Yes, they want to engage with the Tribute of the King too, but the items that they were getting, trash items, things I don't want, things that can be produced from farming the maps anyways, versus actual interesting content and gear. So they just made the decision and they said, uniques only. This is probably the biggest change that they could have done. It certainly affects me because I'm going to start with Ritual this league, probably. Because when you make it uniques only, uniques like the Palm of the Dreamer, the 4 different versions that appear, one of them has to be corrupted, but the other 3 have to basically be chanced from shrine altars, and you have to get the base from the ground. And the problem is that there was a premium on chance orbs, because it was really hard to find uniques. What this now does is that it creates a way for you to get access to uniques without you being lucky off of drop pools. Do you get what I'm saying? You don't have to be lucky to find uniques now. You can get a chance to find uniques, and even if you don't find the unique you're looking for, you can buy random ones from Ritual, turn them into Chaos Orbs, into Chance Orbs, and then roll them on the encounters that you want. There's even orbs inside of, there are orbs inside of the Ritual tab for the Omens that you can get a random a random guaranteed unique of the type that you're rolling for. So it won't guarantee the unique that you're looking for. It'll guarantee that you'll find a unique of your item type. If you roll a scepter, you're going to get back a scepter. If you roll a armor chest, you're going to get back an armor chest. Or I should say body armor. You're not going to get one of that stat. Not a guaranteed strength chest, not a guaranteed dex chest, not a guaranteed int chest, not a guaranteed dual slot chest, but you'll get back a body armor. So if you're looking in a pool of items, and I'll use an example from the database. If you're looking at a database of items, and you're going to use this intelligently, one of the ways to use this intelligently is to look at the item types that you are trying to fish for. So let's say the type that you're fishing for are scepters. I'm going to post the scepter tree in the side chat. And the thing that you'll notice from the scepter tree here is that, well, actually I don't have to put it there, it's on the screen. But the thing that you'll notice from the choices here is that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scepters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm looking for scepters, and what I want is a guiding palm of the eye, the mind, or the heart, I have to get shrine scepters. I can find those off the ground, and I can then try to turn them into this. Now, unfortunately, the red shrine scepter has a 50%, well, is supposed to have a 50% chance to turn into Sacred Flame as much as it can turn into Guiding Palm of the Heart. But this type of scepter that you find is color-coded. So a blue shrine scepter should be Purity of Ice, Guiding Palm of the Eye. A lightning shrine scepter is supposed to be Guiding Palm of the Mind. A red scepter, if it doesn't roll Sacred Flame, would be Guiding Palm of the Heart. I don't believe that it can turn into Sacred Flame. I think Sacred Flame is supposed to be drop only. I'm not fully sure. But Palm of the Dreamer, you have to corrupt one of the Guiding Palms to turn it into that. So, knowing that the Palm of the Dreamer can only be created by corrupting a Guiding Palm of the Mind, Heart, and Eye, and assuming that the Sacred Flame must be found if it cannot be chanced, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 outcomes for that omen that will transform the item that I'm equipped with. Which I don't even remember what that fucking one is, and I don't even want to bother looking for it. But that means that that omen, one omen gives me my base item back. Because when you use a chance orb, it consumes the orb. And the item. One of them will make it that it guarantees an outcome. The other one will make it that I get my item back. Using this system, this now becomes the fuel for how you fund that research. Because there are definitely items that you want out of the pool, if you are unique chancing for them, that will be build enabling. One of the ones immediately that I'm thinking of is Constricting Command. Getting a Viper Cap is not hard. It is extremely easy to do. This is a really easy, unique chance. Getting the version that you need, which is requires 4 fewer rather than 2 or 3, might be hard, but if I'm looking through Ritual, and I know I want a Constricting Command Viper Cap for my build, and I'm playing the build that I had last season, which to go to my PoE Ninja, and look up my PoE Ninja build from history. PoE.Ninja and Blocked Lead. If I'm using the build that I was using last league that I designed myself, which came with a Reslothus Coil and a Constricting Command Viper Cap that I chanced myself, and a Fall of the Axe, and a copy of Nebulock, if my build needs me to find Nebulock, then I can chance it, or I can find it through Ritual. If I can't chance the Constricting Command, I can find it through Ritual. If I can't chance the Reslothus Coil, I can find it through Ritual. Or, if I'm looking for certain other items that might be valuable to sell on the marketplace, then I can look for something that I can sell while also looking for that item, or looking for other items that can be used on builds for the purposes I need them for. So on this window, if I didn't need the guiding palm of the hand, heart, or eye to turn into Palm of the Dreamer, I would probably secure and outright buy that Beacon of Aziz. Because Beacon of Aziz is an extremely difficult to get and expensive item. If this can pull a Beacon of Aziz, because it's pulling uniques only, then this means the chance that I can find this is no longer, oh, well, I guess I don't get to play that build this league. I actually get to play the builds that use Critical Strike this league. So, the way to look at this change is basically, if it's in the unique pool, and it's not drop disabled, which, let me look up one that I'm thinking about right now. I want to see if Deepest Tower is active. Deepest Tower, Deepest Tower, Deepest Tower. No, it's not active. So it's probably still out of the pool. So, Deepest Tower is still drop disabled. So this item here is disabled. It doesn't exist in the game right now. It physically existed at one point in time, which was during 0.1 and 0.2, because it was removed from the game at the start of 0.3. You can see it here on the version history. The following uniques can no longer drop and will be reintroduced at a later date when they change their pool. Inferno Clasp, Forbidden Gave, Thunderstep, the Wailing Whale, the Fallen Formation, Wyland Stake, the Deepest Tower, and the Remembered Tales. It's because they were overly broken in 0.1 and 0.2. And it was so broken that they had to take them out. Because, for example, this one says, enemies in your presence count as low life. There is a wheel on the tree that increases your damage permanently against enemies that are on low life. If enemies are on low life nearby you, this is basically the other side of the broken tree of the constricting command Viper Cap. This one enables surrounded nodes. This one enables low life nodes. That's a lot of power. If I no longer have to be lucky that they drop on the ground, and I can instead, not so much deterministically, but entropy-based, be lucky, and eventually get access to it, then I am looking at a serious level of potential where everything that I'm doing no longer needs me to basically suck someone's dick, get lucky, find a really lucky drop, do a lot of mindless farming that amounts to nothing, and potentially just pray that the luck of the cards are in my fate. I can get this item, well, at least Constricting Viper, but theoretically both of them, without having to chance them. And even if it's not good for my build, I can put it away and eventually use it on another build at a later date. Because some builds require those build enabling uniques to be powerful. By doing this, you're putting power in your hand to enable yourself in the future. It's not as good if you're thinking of, I want the power from my build right now, but again, it depends on how many pieces you're actually using. So if you consider it like this, instead of the uniques that are here, let's say one of the items I was looking for was here, and another item I was looking for was here, but I couldn't afford it. So let's say the Nebulock and the Constricting Viper and the Lasalthus Coil were in this window. I can't afford the Lasalthus Coil. I can't afford the Nebulock outright. I'd have to do more farming, because this person's on 3 out of 4. But I can afford the Constricting Viper. Knowing that I can easily chance a Constricting Viper, because Viper caps drop like candy, that means if I deterministically decide, I know that this will turn into Viper Cap. There are no other items that are Viper Cap. There's no item base that is also Viper Cap. It can only be this. Knowing that that base exists, going over to it, knowing that the Viper Cap exists, and there is no other unique base that can turn into it, as it shows here on the database, from the Constricting Command as one of the 4 Dex Helm 6 affixes from level 38. I know that I can forego the Viper Cap in the window, and I can instead say, okay, it's either Nebulock or Resolvus Coil. Now, the Sloth's Coil is fucking hard to get. Can I spell? Yes, I can. The Sloth's Coil is hard to get, because it has to come off of an ornate belt. If I was to get an ornate belt, it does say that there is only one unique outcome that can come from it. But it is a really hard base to roll. They don't drop very often. You have to really reduce your negative rarity to negative 50 item rarity reduced, because it will make more gray items drop more often. Exceptional tiers, higher tier bases, etc. But you can't make it drop those because it can't drop exceptional. It can't roll the exceptional into the unique. You get what I'm saying? It has to be exactly ornate belt. It can't be exceptional ornate belt. So, if I know I can do that, and then Nebulock, I don't even think they put Nebulock space in the game. It's technically called an Excruciatus Hammer, but I do not believe this drops. No, it doesn't. So, you have 2 items that have bases that drop. You have 1 item that has a base that does not drop. So this doesn't come from something you can chance. It's not in the game. Technically, it's in the game for the purposes of the base type of the weapon, but it has never dropped the base item. There's no zone that it drops from, is what I'm trying to say. If I can defer the Nebulock Hammer, and I can buy the Lasaltus Coil on the next feature, but I wouldn't have enough to buy one and defer the other, I would have to defer both. But by doing that, I can at least say to myself, okay, I have a Nebulock and I have a Rathlotha Coil in deferment, and I can keep doing more and more ritual so I can work it down more and more. And if I do ritual, and I keep consistently keeping it on that level, I can potentially set myself up for success in the later stage of the game, where I'm now more focused on that final outcome of, in the future, after I do 2 more maps, 3 more maps, I do 3 more cycles of ritual, I will be able to afford these 2 pieces. Because the chance that they show up it's proportional to the value of the item. Cheaper things show up faster. Expensive things show up less frequently. So if I open up my window in my ritual, and I don't see the Nebulock and I don't see it, I know that they're safe because they're in deferment, and it's going to offer me something else. And let's say that window that it's offering me is this window. In that window, I can say, do I want to defer the palm, or do I want to just take the beacon, and then let it be what it is? Because maybe I won't have enough to defer something else. And then, with the least amount of tribute I have left over, I'll buy the omen. Those are the kind of calculations you can now make. Because you're not thinking about all this trash that you have to sort through, where it's just nothing, 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 and you feel really shitty, because it's like, am I just farming for experience? Because you can't find anything. Can't find omens, because they're being overwritten by trash items. Can't find uniques, because they're being overwritten by trash items. Can't find audiences of the king, because they're being overwritten by trash items. And you feel bad when you're not able to profit off of it. That's one way that you can use the favor system. The other way to use the favor system is, let's say you don't want to defer. You're all or nothing. What's in the window is what's in the window. Well, you get a lot of favor, and then you re-roll the window. I don't like what's in this option. Let's flip the other one. Ooh, I like what's in this option. I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. And maybe you do it so that you can find something that you are trying to defer. So you can either do it as layaway, or you can do it as a structured reroll gamble. Either one, you're pulling in a lever slot that says, I don't like this loot. Click, I don't like this loot. Click, damn, I ran out of tribute. I don't like this loot. Click, I don't like this loot. Click, ooh, I like that, but I can't afford it. So I'm going to put it on deferment. And over and over and over. It means you'll get more omens. You'll get more uniques. Even if you get trash uniques, if you have a unique tab to put them away for later, you'll have a copy of them so you can use them on a build over whatever other time you make a build for. And if push comes to shove and you have multiple copies of them, you can fall them to try to get them a corrupt implicit. You can try to double corrupt them to get them 2 armor implicits. You can try to turn them into a special item if the item happens to be a vol item, using a cultivator orb from the incursion content. Or if push comes to shove, you turn it into a chance orb and you try to turn it into the item you actually want. This puts more power in the hand of the player and gives them the ability to actually play for a goal instead of just being like, all I want to do is go to the audience of the king. Because for that, they actually made a button. What you can do now, other than just paying with the tribute, is that if you don't want what the game has to offer you, after you've paid all the money, you put all the rest of your tribute options towards the king. It just takes all the remaining tribute, and it's got a bar on the bottom of the screen, and when you press that button, it says, all this juice, drain into this bar. When this bar fills up, I get a tribute. Guaranteed. Not a chance. Anything that I don't want, oh, fuck all this shit. Tribute button. Yes, give me my boot, tribute button. Yep, give me the, yeah, all I want is the audience of the king. You can immediately say, I'm deferring this content in trade for faster attribution to the tribute of the king. Make sense? It's the same payoff that they put onto the Citadel. If you don't want to run those maps in the Citadel, you press the button, it automatically completes them. If you don't care about the items in the window, you press the button, you get to the goal that you want faster. More player control with direct guides. Now for the fucking content here, it's got a very overcomplicated quest line. However, the part that's interesting about this is that the Rite of the Nameless requires you to face a pinnacle boss that requires you to sacrifice your name. The Nameless basically are creatures that don't exist. Anything that has a name is real. If they don't have a name, they're not real. Perfect logic so far, right? So if it has to have a name to be real, there is a boss underneath the zone that the Ritual King has been using that is responsible for the problems that are going to happen because of his tribute work. He's basically been doing rituals on top of a seal. And because he's been doing a ritual on top of a seal, he's been weakening the seal. The encounter quest giver in this storyline, she needs you to recover her body because she's in a spirit plane, separated from her body. And she needs you to put her back in her body. But to put her back in her body, you need to get to the Nameless King to retrieve it. But then, to do the ritual, you discover that there is a boss on the ritual site. And in order to face that as a champion, you must be nameless. But you have a name. So you have to do the Rite of the Nameless to transfer your name to an effigy. So that you can then put on the crown of the Nameless King to become the Nameless Champion. And then you can fight that encounter. It's a very, very long quest chain that seems complicated, but it's very simple. You just do encounters. You just do rituals. But the thing about the ritual is that every time you do a ritual, you get a choice to do things. So one example is the four-tool proliferation. When you do this zone, should you pick the map to go to it, your proliferation will have a special effect. Some effects could be that the monsters that you sacrifice in the altar when you kill them will grant you more tribute. Another one can be all your unique favors at ritual altars will instead be currency. If I read that correctly, it's either one of two outcomes. It means all of your potential offerings and favor choices at a ritual window will turn into omens, or it means it will turn into itemized currency for the League. Basic itemized currency. Everything from chaos orbs to normal orbs to crafting orbs to divine orbs and exalted orbs, which is good. That's a good outcome. Getting money that you will eventually use later to create items is always good. Ritual altar sacrifice increased tribute is always good because you're increasing the baseline of what you can be able to afford and defer. There are other options that are very similar here. If you were a player and you knew what a Mage Blood was, which is a very powerful chase unique, this is basically saying if you do this encounter on this map, you get this item guaranteed. So, do you want 5 Chaos Orbs, or do you want one of the rarest items in the game? Tough choice, bro. Tough choice. This was bait for people who were watching the stream, because they wanted us to be excited and hype for this moment. But the thing that's really important about this encounter is that when you're doing the Rite of the Nameless, the encounter doesn't end when you complete it. When you do the Rite of the Nameless, every encounter is linked, and it saves the map boss from the last encounter that you did. So, you get 1 boss, you get 2 boss, you get 3 bosses, 4 bosses. It starts turning into an auto-battler. Have you ever heard of auto-battlers? Like Vampire Survivors, for example? Certainly you've heard of Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors, Soulstone Survivors, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. Basically, these very hard-to-kill bosses are going to multiply. So where Delirium is just doubling your boss, this is like a gamble of double, triple, quadruple, or nothing. And each of these bosses have their own health pools, and they're real logistic enemies you have to face and fight. So, as you fight them in this way, what you're effectively doing is you are challenging yourself to complete the encounters, and the encounters get harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. But if you succeed, imagine the profit! And then you get to fight the boss encounter after you finish the Rite of the Nameless. That and a couple of like upkeeping things is the majority of what that content is designed around. And I think that was like the last thing they had to show. They had other things that were important to its core, but that was like the core of everything that was really, really important. That, and they're finally adding Challenge League content, which requires you to do certain kinds of encounters in order for you to receive a free-to-play reward that will be given to you should you do all the encounters. In the other game, it was like 32 challenges. In this game, it's 8. But it's like, the things that you have to do, they could be difficult, to very simple, to very specific. And I think that's everything. So I think that's everything I have to show everybody right now. Nothing else comes to mind. They go through the new skills, and they go through the new classes, and what the classes can do. But I'm not as interested in that as I was in showing everybody everything else that they're showing off. But basically, this fucking change is one of the most expected and biggest patches ever released in the history of Path of Exile. And I'm so hyped to play this. I'm so fucking hyped to play this. So, before I go, any comments, questions, concerns? No? Yes?
From me, no.
Okay. So.
I just wish I had the money for this.
Okay, so, just to recap everything that I've said so far, and going over everything that we've talked about here today. Wait, is that right? There you go. I have been busy in the hospital, doing my regular job, caring for my mother. I've also been helping Dev with Turtle Wow recordings. It will be ending on May the 15th. When that comes up, you're going to see me start transitioning into doing a lot of different coverage streams of versus chat content. Some requested by people in the community. Some updates on my takes on these dramas that have been happening. And crossover with other communities and other people. And as I go through that content, as we go through the month of May, as we approach the 29th, when this all releases for Path of Exile 2, you're going to see a lot more short-form takes and long-form takes on my channel coming up, so that there's content for people to consume and watch. So you won't be bored. When I don't get distracted, and when I don't get subverted, or my timeline gets knocked off, the community group gaming streams will continue to happen. Sometimes they might not even be televised. They might just be in-house, just because we want to have a chill night and be lax. Movie nights are the same thing. I have assortments of movies coming up that I want to watch with the community, and that will happen at the same time. The posted time for those are already there. The links for the threads to put those things in are also there too. And then, in concerns to the Steam card giveaways, if I don't just give cards away based on whoever's present and who's available, more than likely it'll still be given away via competition. Eternal Return is one of the few ones that we are still doing competition on. I'm still open to suggestions for other games that people want to be competitive in, to put them in, so that there's an in-house virtue to bring people to the events to participate in the tournaments, so they can get to know more of the competitors and more of the players that are available. If you have any of those ideas, put them into community group gaming inside of the server. I'm running these things amongst server members, not just amongst stream watchers. I am trying to think of ways of rewarding stream watchers as much as server members, but I am all about loyalty these days to the brand. To the server. So, supporting the channel, supporting the content, showing up to the content, these are all ways to support the channel and to support me and the community. I take the money from those things and I put them towards events like the Running of the Hands and any other event that I will run, whether in the house or with other people. I find ways of paying the dividend back to people through things like Dare Drop and other services, if not buying the keys for myself outright for up-and-coming games that we're really expecting, and especially for games that we want me to review that look like dog shit and are going to be a really great video to write about, or a really great game experience to write about, or a really great playthrough to play through. That money can be crowdsourced for that purpose. We're still counting down the days till my hair is properly done, so us to do the hair dye. So that's going to happen probably towards the end of this month as well. More than likely, it'll probably coincide with the release of Path of Exile. So we'll see what happens there. But things are happening. Things are changing in the background. Being invested and being involved will make sure that you're up to date on what's going on. Being sidelined by the medical shit sucks. But I haven't forgotten to do my job. I'm still doing my job. I'm just being a lot more academic and scholastic about what I'm writing and what I'm putting on to paper to put on to put into video format and to put onto content. So it will come out in time. All of my older projects are also still coming out in time. I had to figure out the ways I wanted to do them, and I needed to find the time in which to edit them, which I've been getting a lot of that time right now. From there, it is what it is. Thank you for everybody who's been concerned about me. I appreciate it. Again, if you have any other questions about the shit that's been going on with me, direct them to this live stream. It has all the explanations of what I'm doing and what's going on. Anything else on that I have yet to say that comes up between now and the next time I do another one of these will be on the Yappins, which more than likely is going to get rolled into the Fried Chicanery podcast. And then the podcast will just relaunch as a solo show with myself, because I don't know if I'm ever going to need to have another co-host, because I'm tired of having to wait on other people to be prepared and ready to do shit that is important to my job and work. So, that's everything that's going on. That's everything I have to say. So, does anybody in the chat or anyone here have any questions they have before I leave the stream?
I don't got any.
Okay. Fancy, do you have any?
No, not at the moment. Just me.
Okay. I don't know why I'm burpy. It's about to be 8 minutes till 9. I don't know when we're going to start reading, but more than likely we're going to start reading. I need to grind some quests and get some shit done and cross some T's and dot some I's and get in touch with Kinoflex. So I will see you all later. Again, thank you all for your support. I love you all equally, but not as much as I love my woman. I will see you all in the future at a later date. Goodbye.